There are more answers than you know.
4 students found each had multiple stab wounds. Some had defensive wounds, showing they fought with the attacker. And there was no sexual assault. County Coroner Kathy Mabbutt is describing the murders as personal.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Watch the Obsession True Crime live stream. Second live stream this weekend. Woo woo. Third live stream this week. I was going to slow down with the live streams, but here we are because I love hearing what y'all have to say and spending time with you and talking about the details of these cases with you guys. So thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad you guys are here on this Saturday night. Tonight, we are going to be talking about the Idaho 4 case, Idaho versus Bryan Kohberger. And we are going to be talking about what do we know now? So after the hearing that took place, the hearing before the Franks hearing that took place on January 23rd and January 24th, we, as you might know, did learn a lot in the evidentiary category just by hearing the arguments of Bryan Kohberger's defense, specifically Ann Taylor, who is making those arguments to Judge Hippler. And then, we learned little through the state's response, which is kind of typical. I think we tend to learn more when Ann Taylor is making her arguments in court, when we are privileged enough to see those court hearings, since there is such a strict and broad gag order in place, as we all know, right? So, there have been little tidbits that I have picked up on ever since, we watched that hearing the day the hearing happened. Well, the Thursday one, at least, here together on the channel. And then, I've watched it again along the way. I watched, other channels, read articles to see what other people picked up on. And then I've picked up on some things myself. So we're going to talk about all of that. We're going to put that all together and then talk about Bryan Kohberger's alleged route from Pullman, Washington to Moscow, Idaho on the night in question, along with what we now know about the roommate, Dylan Mortensen, and Bethany Funk's experience that night, including some pretty revealing details that we've talked about some of the ancillary issues on this channel, but we haven't hit on directly. So we're going to talk about that tonight, and I think it's going to be very intriguing. Also, we are going to take a look at, and thank you, McJay, for sending this to me. McJay sends me some great information. She's always on top of it. I did happen to see this because I was researching it the other day, but she reminded me of it tonight. We're going to look at the, let's see, what is it called exactly? Because I don't want to call it the wrong thing. The notice of filing list of stipulated exhibits for motions to suppress and motions for the Franks hearing. So this is the evidence that the defense wanted to be suppressed through having the Franks hearing and having the judge side with them, of course, which is when, if that happened, the judge would say, okay, you're right. The IgG DNA evidence needs to be thrown out. It was never presented to the grand jury. This is kind of in summary what the defense is hoping. So therefore, a la fruit of the poisonous tree, all of the evidence that was collected is an extension of that is going to be suppressed or thrown out. Defense's dream come true. Then essentially there would be no case standing because there wouldn't be enough evidence towards probable cause to have a case. And well, wouldn't that be a gigantic, big ass defense win? It would. So hello, Kylie Cosmo. Welcome. Kezchick. So glad you're here. Angel D, Legendary CEO. So glad you're here. Hopefully getting notifications still. Coffee Fueled. Nice to see you. McJay, again, thank you. Knox Randall, welcome. Nice to see you. Miss Jo Allen, nice to see you as well. Let's see who else is there. Tanel Ray and Jody, welcome. Thanks for everything that you do. Lindy Q, I'm going to call you. I don't want to say your name wrong. Welcome to you as well. And we're just going to go up a little more. If I miss you, say hello. I'll try to say hello back to you. Please don't think I ignored anyone intentionally. I would never do that. Love you guys. And I know Honey Bun is here. I know Kevin is here. Edward, welcome. How are you doing? And I think I'm going to stop my scroll just about here. StreamYard, what's up, right? Let's see. Some people are in black on my screen. Some people are in blue. So sometimes my eyes just kind of, like, did I say cuff off? Did I say hello to you, cuff off? Glad you're here. Glad you can make it. All right. See, let me get back down to the bottom. All right. Hey, GF Twins, how are you doing? Nice to see you. And Tanique Brown, welcome. Welcome to the channel. Hey, if you're new here, let us know specifically what you're interested in this case or where you're from. Just say something to introduce yourself so we can say hello back to you and welcome you into the discussion, because we all want to know what you think. Just we ask that you're respectful to the victims family members, and of course, obviously to one another, right? So what I'm going to bring in right now is a video from, first, wait a minute. First, I want to go over with you something that we picked up on when we were watching. Carrie, I don't think Carrie is here tonight, at least not yet. When we were watching the hearing on the day of the hearing, that Thursday of the hearing, we were like, what is up with that, right? And then Angel D and some other people told me, that weird moment you picked up on, it was Judge Hipple that was actually saying something to Ann Taylor, but he was muted. Just look at Judge Hipple. So I did go back and watch that, and I think y'all are right. So let's just watch that together. She's talking about lack of DNA evidence connecting Bryan Kohberger to the crime in his car. Oh my God, my son just got on with his freaking gaming frenzy. He's going to be loud. I have to go tell him to quiet down. I love my child so much, but it's like every time I go live, he's like, it's time to game. Woo! All right. Oh, jeez. All right, let's watch this.
Case is exculpatory, but isn't the DNA connection in and of itself probable cause to support any of it from there?
Your Honor, the DNA I'm talking about is the lack of DNA in Mr. Kohberger's car and the lack of DNA in his apartment, the lack of connection to the individuals.
What is that? Even if disclosed, preclude a finding of probable cause when there's a DNA match between the DNA in the sheath and Mr. Kohberger. Isn't that probable cause every day and twice on Sunday?
Not in this context. Not in this context because of the IgG work, because
oh crap, just a second, guys.
that's the ultimate question.
Okay, so sorry about that. That was like totally my fault. Sorry. I just hit the wrong thing. So let me bring that back in. I think that's what we were watching right there. Alrighty. Yeah.
What does that mean, right? What does a knife sheath at a scene mean? That's going to be the ultimate question.
Killed by a knife, it probably means a lot.
It might mean a lot.
Probable cause is not a proof beyond a reasonable doubt standard. It's probable cause to think that this person might have done it. And I'm not sure how that direct DNA connection to a sheath.
Hold up. I think we passed it. Connection on talking sculptory DNA was of himself. DNA seems to be the warrants. No, we aren't there yet. Okay, we're just about getting there. All right. Go right back to where he was just talking.
Or their own case is exculpatory, but isn't the DNA connection in and of itself probable cause to support any of it from there?
Your Honor, the DNA I'm talking about is the lack of DNA in Mr. Kohberger's car and the lack of DNA in his apartment, the lack of connection to the individuals.
What is that? Even if disclosed, preclude a finding of probable cause when there's a DNA match between the DNA in the sheath and Mr. Kohberger. isn't that probable cause every day and twice on Sunday?
I love that he said that.
Not in this context. Not in this context, because of the IGG work. Because I mean, that's the ultimate question that will be before a jury. What does that mean, right? What does a knife sheath at a scene mean? That's going to be the ultimate question. You're
Killed by a knife, it probably means a lot.
Huh?
It might mean a lot.
Probable cause is not a proof beyond a reasonable doubt standard.
Look at Kohberger. He's like, oh shit. Skinny little guy right now, right?
It's probable cause to think that this person might have done it. And I'm not sure how that direct DNA connection to a sheath found on or near one of the victims doesn't close the book on anything on probable cause after that.
Okay, so you know what? I don't think that was the part I was looking for, but I'm going to find it while we're watching something else, and I'll go back. But I'm glad that we're watching this because, you know, what the judge is saying here. Obviously, he's the judge. He knows so much more than I do or any of us do, ostensibly, right, about the law. But he's saying, well, you know, isn't the DNA match to Kohberger and the knife sheath? You know, doesn't that count? You know, every day and twice on Sunday or whatever. But isn't that the whole point? That if it weren't for, and tell me if you guys think that I'm interpreting this wrong, but this is how I'm taking it. If it weren't for the IGG investigative work towards matching Bryan Kohberger to the DNA sample that was found on the knife sheath via his ancestral DNA and whoever put it into the database, then they wouldn't have had, this is the defense's argument, enough evidence to eventually get a warrant for Bryan Kohberger's arrest for a search of his property and his person, because they wouldn't have enough evidence for a probable cause affidavit to present to a judge to ask him to sign a warrant to get those, to get permission to do those searches, right? So I think that's like a really interesting argument there, but I do want to find the part where Ann Taylor just says, you know, there was no blood in the car, there was no deep, right? Remember we were talking about that? And it does look like the judge cut her off and was saying something, and I just think that's really interesting because you have to wonder what he was saying. So yeah, if you guys could please hit like, I'd really appreciate it. Robin, thanks for saying that. And welcome to all of you who are coming in. So I'm going to bring something different into the live stream here. And this is from, I think it's Court TV. And it just talks about, you know, it hits on the big things, the big interesting points of evidence that we learned about by virtue of this pre-Frank's hearing, so to speak. Okay. So let me just bring this in here. I think they did a pretty good job on it. And then there's a few that they didn't mention in here that we're going to talk about. We're going to go over that evidence list and we're going to talk about a whole lot of other things. But just start, let's cleanse our palate with this. Welcome to those of you guys coming in. Thanks for being here. All right, 9 shocking new details in the Bryan Kohberger case.
Alleged that a single piece of evidence ties Mr. Kohberger to this case.
Bryan Kohberger returns to court, hoping to get the evidence the state has collected against him thrown out as his lawyers reveal new details about the night of the murders.
This witness has claimed that she's not sure what she heard or saw was real or whether it was at a dream.
And prosecutors are firing back.
We know it wasn't a dream because they found the evidence discovered the next morning.
Welcome to Crime Fix. I'm Anjanette Levy. Bryan Kohberger's quadruple murder trial is scheduled to begin this summer. But if his lawyers get their way, this trial won't start at all. Kohberger's lawyers are trying to get most, if not all, of the evidence in the case thrown out. And they've revealed a lot of new information about the night of the murders. I'll get to that very shortly. Kohberger's lawyers spent 2 days arguing, questioning witnesses, and presenting evidence to Judge Stephen Hippler about a number of things, including investigative genetic genealogy. That's how Kohberger was identified as a suspect. Kohberger's lawyers also claimed that Moscow police officers misled a magistrate in their affidavits when applying for search warrants and when seeking the warrant for Kohberger's arrest. Kohberger is accused of murdering 4 University of Idaho students, Maddie Mogan, Kayla Gonsalves, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle at a house near campus in November of 2022. He says he's innocent. The crime was horrific, and police have said in a probable cause affidavit that Kohberger's DNA was left on the snap of a K-bar knife sheath left next to Maddie Mogen's body. Now, the FBI used that DNA to search genetic genealogy databases, which led to Kohberger's ancestors and eventually to him. Kohberger's lawyers say the FBI's process violated his rights, but the prosecution disagrees. Here's a little bit of attorney Ann Taylor arguing on behalf of Bryan Kohberger.
Your Honor, our position is that the court should suppress the IgG identification and everything that flows from that. This is supported by Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution.
Now, again, we're going to take a look at the defense's proposed stipulated, evidence suppression sheet, and it's really interesting. And okay, so spoiler alert, one of the things that I found most interesting as I was looking through this form, I mean, it's like 4 pages long of itemized things that the defense believes should be suppressed due to this IgG DNA information, fruit of the poisonous tree, right? Are you guys sick of hearing that yet? Did you know, because I did not know this, there were 4 separate, individual, distinct interviews with law enforcement and Dylan Mortensen. And the dates of those interviews are on that evidence suppression proposal list. And I think that's really interesting and somewhat telling. Now, I'm going to have to look at it again with you guys, but as far as I see, there were not any instances of interviews with Bethany Funk on that proposed evidence suppression form from the defense. So we'll take a look at that and see what you guys think that means. 4 separate interviews with Dylan Mortensen. I think this spans probably over like a month and a half, possibly 2 months.
Due process, Article 1, Section 17 of the Idaho Constitution. Your Honor, there was no warrant for several phases of the search that led to the IgG work, investigative genetic genealogy. And we think every single one of those stages, a warrant was required. None was given. And so this must be suppressed.
Now, the defense maintains the investigative genetic genealogy work performed by the FBI violated Kohberger's rights because agents accessed databases of companies that may not have permitted them to do so, which violated the terms of services for those companies.
Let's say my DNA is taken lawfully. What privacy interest do I have in the search of the DNA of others?
That's a loaded question.
Why is it a loaded question? Isn't it a factual question?
Well, it is, Judge, but you're assuming that the DNA was taken lawfully, and our position.
I agree. That part is an assumption. In my hypothetical, I said my DNA was taken lawfully. Why would I have standing to object to the search of other people's DNA simply because I might share some genetic information with them because they are distantly related to me?
Well, Your Honor, our position is that this work was not done lawfully, that it was unlawful, that there needed to be a warrant, that this was done outside of a warrant. And I'm not asserting on behalf of anybody else in this, any relative, anybody who might have been named or not named.
For its part, the prosecution says Bryan Kohberger's Fourth Amendment rights are what matter here, and the state says those rights were not violated.
Even assuming that that's all correct and that they violated the terms.
Seems to be the evidence.
The terms of service, Your Honor, don't affect the Fourth Amendment. The terms of service, and certainly Mr. Kohberger does not have standing to raise a violation of the terms of service. And even if he did, the remedy for the terms of service is not a violation of the Fourth Amendment. As we argued in our brief, the individuals, and as came out in testimony today, the individuals who are utilizing these databases, and we're talking about millions of them, are willingly sharing their information with each other, with millions of other people.
Isn't there a subset that says, but I don't want these people to look at it?
In some of the data,
The FBI, as I understand the evidence, then says, okay, we agree, we won't search those ones.
so I'll address that part, but on the database piece, the issue is that no one sharing this information with millions of other people could have a reasonable expectation of privacy. The test for that isn't, do they have a reasonable expectation of privacy against law enforcement? It's against the public writ large.
Judge Hippler has been presiding over this case now for several months, and he has a way of putting both the defense and the state on the spot when they make their arguments, and he did it right here.
IGG was used in this case, and yes, it did point to the defendant. But the fact that that happened doesn't mean that there was a violation of the Fourth Amendment. Unless the court has any questions, we'd ask you to deny the motion to suppress.
If the FBI, in fact, violated the Fourth Amendment rights of Mr. Kohberger, you would agree the state is burdened by that?
That's a great way of putting it, Your Honor. Yes, the state would be burdened by that. Yes.
It's safe to say our stories prove the world is unpredictable, and having a great lawyer really matters. That's where Morgan & Morgan, the exclusive personal injury law, you can easily start a claim
About
to get search warrants. Taylor listed a number of instances where she said the officers misled the magistrate when writing their affidavits.
this probable cause affidavit talks about an interview they had where the person that was interviewed said that she heard things and saw things within her house. But what is written in the probable cause affidavit is seriously lacking in detail. It's wrong and it's false in many places. The way the affidavit reads, it says, this person stated she went to sleep on the second floor. She was awoken at 4 by what she stated sounded like one of the victims playing with the dog, which was on the 3rd floor. A short time later, she thought she heard one of the victims say something. That caveat, she thought she heard, is a problem. That's not at all what was said. This person was interviewed shortly after 911 was called in the.
And as I was just saying, we're going to take a look at it. We now know from the proposed defense evidence suppression sheet, she was interviewed on 4 separate distinct occasions, at least that they're listing, and there may have been more. That's a lot of interviewing, Dylan Mortensen.
Afternoon of November 13th, 2022. And she was sure, I'm at Defendant's Exhibit 8A, page 281, lines 4 through 10, when this witness was sure that she heard this particular victim go down the stairs, go up the stairs, and then come running back down the stairs. That is not what's contained in this affidavit at all.
Now, this is really interesting information that we hadn't heard before. Taylor went on to explain why she believes this discrepancy is important.
That is important because that's misleading to the judge. That waters down what was said, and that matters in the probable cause affidavit because the officers, when they wrote this, knew that wasn't the case. They knew this particular person that DM said was upright and running down the stairs, that's not what happened. That person was killed in the bed and never left the bed. And so the officers water that down because they know that fact is wrong, but they don't tell the magistrate that. They also don't tell the magistrate that this witness has claimed memory problems, that this witness has claimed that she's not sure what she heard or saw was real or whether it was at a dream.
So Ann Taylor is saying the surviving roommate claimed to have memory problems and that she didn't know whether what she recalled was a dream or not. Taylor is questioning the surviving roommate's credibility.
There are 2 references to not remembering. A couple of days later, there's the 3rd interview, and there's references to not remembering, being drunk, a statement, I don't know any of it, like half this stuff. I don't know if it's a dream or if it's real. That's at page 399. At page 406, I don't know if this was real or in my mind was just like playing with me. But from what I think I heard, someone was crying in the bathroom. These are definite statements that were not given to the magistrate and in fact were brushed over. And credibility is really, really important when that person is relied on in the investigation.
But the prosecution defended the surviving roommate's statements to the judge, saying her description of the man she saw in the house wearing all black never changed.
The person was a slim, skinny, lean build. And the person was taller than she is around 5'8". That's what's important. It was that general description. And that general description did not change.
It's also important to establish the timeline.
It is. It's important to establish the timeline to know when the timeline matched the vehicle surveillance of when a suspect vehicle is coming into the area of 11:22 and then leaves, as well as text communications of her relaying what she's observing during the same time period.
So you heard.
Okay, well, wait, hold it. Let's let Angelina Levy make that point because here.
Right there. Assistant Prosecutor Ashley Jennings said one of the surviving roommates was texting what she was seeing. That is really interesting and had been rumored on social media.
All right, guys. So this is where, this evidence connects into the information. Hi, little bunny. And my bunny's like hopping up on me. I don't know. That I shared with you guys that I learned from the channel sources who are two students from the University of Idaho who were good friends with Ethan Chapin. And that is their connection to this case. So many of you know, I've said it a million times, I have been talking with them since 10 days or 2 weeks after this tragedy happened. And through them, they have shared a lot of what they believe has happened. Okay. So one of the things that I shared with you, and we'll go over this more in detail over it towards the end, is that Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk were indeed communicating during the time of, let me say this. I need to be specific in this. Right around the time of the tragedy that evening. I don't want this pause on Anjanette Levy. I don't know why it's bothering me. Okay. And the contents of those text communications was this. Dylan, roughly, okay, guys, I don't have notes in front of me that I'm reading from, but roughly this was the story that was relayed to me that they learned was both Dylan and Bethany's experience and what happened in the communication between them. So this is all I can tell you, and that's exactly how it was told to me. So take it for what it's worth. On this channel, we are truth seeking, justice wanting, fact-based, and obviously I have reason to put faith into these people, or to trust at least what they're telling me. Okay, so Dylan was texting Bethany along with all of the other roommates because she was freaked out due to what she heard and saw. Whether or not she got a response from any of the other roommates, they didn't mention. Now you might say, Kelly, that's like a stupid idea, right? We know what happened to the other roommates. Somebody brought up to me in a comment on my recent Idaho 4 video that, hey, well, maybe, Dylan had texted Ethan and Ethan was like, oh, something weird's going on. Hey, let me go see what's happening. And that's when he encountered Kohberger. And I mean, that is totally possible. So that's why I'm saying it that way. Prior to that, reading that person's comment, I wouldn't have, but maybe that is what happened. We don't know. But they just said that Dylan texted everybody. Obviously Bethany responded. Bethany was also freaked out. So during the course of their communication, Bethany and Dylan shared these notes about what they just saw. Dylan shared with Bethany what she saw, which is apparently, as they believe it to be, as they told it to me, roughly what is described in the probable cause affidavit, that she saw somebody outside of her bedroom door and he looked like this. He was in all black. He had a face mask on. She was freaked out. He left through the back patio sliding glass door. And then Bethany described to Dylan what she just saw because she was also freaked out. And she saw, and I don't know if she was already awoken by noise, or I'm not sure. I was not given any of those details. I don't know if they were given any of those details, but I do not know. But outside of her first floor bedroom window that looked into the parking area of their house, she saw someone that matched the description of the person that Dylan saw as well, who was dressed in all black. She kind of caught a side view of him and saw him also from the back. He came around the side of the house that is like most open. You know, if you're looking at the house, if you're looking at Bethany Funk's first bedroom floor window, it would be on the right side. And then he kind of started to transverse across the driveway, heading towards, you know, that road that winds up to the other side of their house where the cul-de-sac is. But he was headed down, not up that hill, leading me to believe that I don't believe that he parked in that little parking area up behind their house, like a lot of people believe at the end of that cul-de-sac, due to this story. So why? Okay, so then you may ask, well, why did they call 911 then? Oh my God, they both saw this like creepy ass strange person inside their house. If you're Dylan, outside their house, if you're Bethany, it alarmed both of them. They're talking about it. Why didn't they call 911? Well, my answer to that is that during the course of their conversing with one another, they, you know, comforted one another. Like, oh my God, okay, so listen, we saw the same thing, but oh, it's quiet now, except for the dog barking, but the dog is always barking. I'm just speculating what the conversation was, okay? You know what? I don't know, man. There's people in and out of our house all the time. Probably wasn't a big deal. You know what? You're right. Maybe Bethany says, yeah, you know what? And I saw this dude outside the house. So even if he wasn't in our house, he's gone now. I saw him walk right across the parking lot and down the street, and he's like out of the area. So, okay, yeah, you're probably right. Oh my God, I drank so much tonight. I'm getting really freaking tired. I'm going to be hung over. Oh yeah, me too. Okay. And then they go to bed, because that was the purpose of them talking, was to compare notes, because they were both alarmed and they were looking for solace. They were looking for comfort. And during the course of their conversation, that's what they provided to one another. And that's what they got. So I think it's very interesting, you know, as we're learning these little additional details that are coming out through things like this hearing, all of them have been lining up exactly with what the two student sources told me a while back now. It's got to be at least a year. I'll have to look to see what my first video on that was. And they told me about this a long time before I ever made a video about it. Like, I thought about this long and hard. We conversed with legal counsel and everything before I opened my mouth about this. But so, for example, let's just go back here to what the state is saying. You know, it very much aligns with the story that these guys told me. Take it for what it's worth.
To the area of 1122 and then leaves, as well as text communications of her relaying what she's observing during the same time period.
So you heard right there, Assistant Prosecutor Ashley Jennings.
A suspect vehicle is coming into the area of 1122 and then leaves, as well as text communications of her relaying what she's observing during the same time period.
So you heard right there, Assistant Prosecutor Ashley Jennings said one of the surviving roommates was texting what she was seeing. That is really interesting and had been rumored on social media. Jennings continued.
The defendant argues when an eyewitness states she's not sure anything she saw was real, a magistrate should know about it. Well, the simple answer is investigators knew what she saw was real, and we know it wasn't a dream because they found the evidence discovered the next morning. Those statements didn't need to be included in the PC affidavit because they weren't exculpatory. They didn't support this idea that this didn't really happen, that somehow we got it wrong.
The probable cause affidavits also contain information about Bryan Kohberger's cell phone records, and it really made it sound like he was near the house on King Road a dozen times. But Ann Taylor is saying that's another way that the officers misled the court.
Based on those records, they absolutely knew that Mr. Kohberger wasn't around that residence, wasn't parked near the residence, didn't stop and have his phone in a stationary position at that residence. They absolutely knew that that's not what was happening, but they put it in there to make a connection that didn't exist. They put it in there so that the judge would think that this was the right person, and they shouldn't have done that. But then you have this false narrative that looks like stalking, that looks like following, and it's not true. That is extremely damaging. It's very misleading. It's an outright lie to the magistrate. When you omit that kind of information, when you take that context out, you might as well say stalking, because that's what you're trying to say, and you know that's not true.
Now, this is so interesting to me because I feel like the way that Ann Taylor argued in this pre-Franks hearing was very much like, we're on trial, like we're at the body of the trial here, right? Like, even the judge said several times, like, well, we're talking about, the probable cause standard, the reasonable person standard, not, reasonable doubt is in the trial to convict him of these horrible crimes. But nevertheless, I don't know. I think, and I thought this all along, that Ann Taylor gets a lot of information out to the public, say, read maybe potential jurors through these filings and through these hearings. And I'm not saying that it's, wrong for her to do that. My God, she's defending somebody who's looking at facing the death penalty. She needs to do whatever she has to do to defend him. And she is, I think, defending her ass off. What do you guys think? What do you guys think?
Prosecution says the officers did not misstate the evidence about those cell towers.
Here's what is in evidence, though, and based off of the PC affidavit, is that the phone was in the area for the tower that provides service to the 1122 residents. Still maintain that's true. Regardless, none of this has any bearing on the validity of the search warrant. Their argument is merely a clarification about which member did what work. And that doesn't matter to the ultimate determination for probable cause.
Now, when it comes to the issue of probable cause, the judge asked this very pointed question.
When there's a DNA match between the DNA in the sheath and Mr. Kohberger. Isn't that probable cause every day and twice on Sunday?
Not in this context. Not in this context because of the IgG work.
The defense is also trying to get evidence from Kohberger's arrest in Pennsylvania at his parents' home and statements he made thrown out, claiming the search violated his rights since the warrant was a no-knock warrant.
They're essentially watching Mr. Kohberger as he moves around his house via snipers. I mean, they were quite safe, and there was simply no reason to bash the doors in momentarily after yelling from their Bearcat.
There's two issues. There's officer safety. There's also destruction of evidence concerns.
In the cases that we cited, Judge, when the claim has been that there's evidence being destroyed, the evidence, what's known to the officers is something along the lines of they hear somebody running away after they announce themselves. It's not typical that the police simply don't knock and announce at all. In those cases, they usually give the person the opportunity to surrender, but it's not a particularly long one. And in this case, they don't do that at all. And the only thing they knew is that he's walking around from room to room and that he has some kitchen gloves on. And I don't think that equates necessarily to the destruction of,
Well, that's not all they knew, but I won't go into the detail in order to.
I want to bring in Philip Dubé. He works as court-appointed counsel in Los Angeles County. So, Philip, I want you to talk to me a little bit about this whole issue that Kohberger's attorneys are talking about, the no-knock warrant when he was arrested at his parents' house in Pennsylvania. His attorneys are saying it was overkill, it violated his rights. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, even assuming that it was overkill and it violated his rights, the U.S. Supreme Court has already spoken on this issue. It was back in 2006 in a case called Hudson versus Michigan. And that involved the search of a residence with a warrant. And they did not sufficiently knock and announce their presence before raiding the residence. And what the court said is that suppression of the evidence is no longer a remedy for the technical violation. The rule exists really just, first of all, that there is a fear that maybe the people inside are dangerous, that they have a weapon, or that there could be imminent destruction of evidence, or that someone could escape. And the fact that somebody didn't knock and wait a few seconds before barging in or waiting for them to open up the door is too technical of a violation constitutionally to say the remedy should be to throw out everything recovered in the property. So the remedy, if any, really is in tort law or in civil rights litigation in the civil courts. So I don't believe that their motion has merit. As ignominious and as offensive it may have been to go in there at that hour or whatever hour it was, doesn't violate the Fourth Amendment. It might violate local tort law or federal civil rights laws, but nothing in the criminal context.
And they made it sound like, the judge said, that's not all they knew when Jay Logston, the defense attorney, said, all they knew, they had a drone up. They saw he was in his kitchen with, he was walking around with kitchen gloves on. And the judge said, that's not all they knew. We know that there was a gun seized from the Kohberger home. So it sounds like there was more to this. And the detective also said things changed that day where they basically decided to do no knock. And there were some other circumstances, but they're kind of keeping that all under wraps right now, I'm assuming, because they don't want to taint the jury pool.
Well, that, and, frankly, they don't want to give their hand away, because you'd be amazed how many people out there who are listening could call in false tips. They could try to sabotage the case, try to emerge, if you will, as this last minute kind of witness. And by keeping things mum and limited to what's in the pleadings, it really furthers the truth-seeking process. And if we're honest, Anjanette, in the end, the police got a warrant. I could see if maybe they went in there without a warrant and felt that there was some type of an emergency.
But the question is, would they have been able to obtain that warrant if it were not for the IGG found evidence? Now, I want to just address a couple of things that people are saying here in chat. But first of all, wait a minute, hold it. So Tammy Lynn, so happy 21st birthday to your daughter, Michaela. That's awesome. So her birthday was on Monday. So that was, was that January 27th? So happy birthday, Michaela. I hope you have an awesome year. And happy birthday to you. Woo! Let's see. Now, also, I want to just address this comment from Angel from earlier. She says, regarding the IGG, I'm not sure why they don't have a way of proving how they got to Bryan Kohberger that way. If they did the IGG legally, why don't they show their work? Right. Well, this was an issue a long, long time ago, right? Around the time of it was right after the grand jury hearing indicting Bryan Kohberger. This was a question that came up via a number of motions and responses. And the answer to that is, yes, it was the FBI who did that work. I like how you said FBI, by the way, Angel. And they just said, well, you know what? We just didn't think to record it. We just didn't think to preserve it. We just didn't think to capture that record or write it down, which struck a whole lot of people, including myself, is goddamn curious at the time, because if you're the FBI and you're that highly trained, practiced, and skilled, you should know that everything that you do at an evidentiary level regarding a capital murder case ×4 should be recorded, captured, and well documented. So, I give it to all the people that question that. I question that myself. Now, McJ, so you were saying, am I going to show that clip? You mean from that TikTok person that Jules was talking about? I don't have that clip. Do you have the link to it? I didn't watch the whole thing. I just watched Jules' video when you said that, she mentioned me, the channel or whatever, and our sources. So I watched that and commented on it. I watched a little clip of the video she included, but if you think I should show it, if I can find the clip, I would totally show it. Hey, Anaflexis, how are you? Good evening, Lisa Wilson. How are you? I'm just my eyes are scrolling down as I'm talking here. So I just sent you a text to McJ. So yeah, I'm sorry to hear about your dad. All right, I'm going to continue to play this.
Emergency situation, but a judge or a magistrate already signed off on their probable cause affidavit and found that there was sufficient evidence to go in there. And to say that nothing will be admissible in court just because they didn't knock or wait a few seconds or announce their presence, Hudson versus Michigan says no can do anymore under Fourth Amendment jurisprudence.
I want to move on now to the motion for a Franks hearing. Basically, the defense is trying to show that they are owed this hearing. They're trying to say that officers misled the court when they went and got search warrants, when they were writing affidavits for probable cause. They say that the roommate, one of the surviving roommates, made some statements, and that she was saying things like, "I don't know if what I remember, if I imagined it, if it was a dream or if it was real." They're acting like, information that this roommate said was left out of the affidavit, and that would have maybe not added up to probable cause. The prosecution counters and says, no, that's not true. Her description of the suspect never changed. What are your thoughts on Ann Taylor's arguments there when she's revealing all of this new information about what that surviving roommate said?
Well, first of all, the statements in the affidavit to qualify for traversing the warrant have to be knowingly false, and they have to be material. There's always going to be, I don't want to call them lies or falsities, but maybe some misrepresentations, some inaccuracies in affidavits. The question is, if you sever those inaccuracies from the affidavit, is there still sufficient facts to find probable cause? And I believe that was the prosecution's argument. Let's just give them that. But there was nothing flagrant, nothing knowingly misleading about what the roommate may have remembered or saw, because at the end of the day, all that really matters, they have 4 dead people in that house. I mean, seriously, there is enough right there to suggest that a crime has been committed, and that by going in, you might be able to solve it, get some leads, find something to lead to the identity of the perpetrator. So I think in the end, the court's not going to traverse the warrant, but instead might say, look, I might sever some of this, but I'm going to find nonetheless that there's still sufficient probable cause to allow this warrant to survive.
And the judge basically said, isn't his DNA on the knife sheath probable cause every day and twice on Sunday? And then Ann Taylor responds and says, not in this context because of the investigative genealogy work. So that was her response. But the judge is basically saying they have probable cause all day long just because of his DNA being on the knife sheath.
Exactly. I mean, if the DNA was not on that knife sheath, let's be honest, Anjanette, I don't even believe that prosecutors would have even filed a case. There just would not have been enough evidence. Certainly there's a lot of suspicion, and there might be probable cause to suggest that he was involved, and certainly that the crime has been committed, but not enough for prosecutors to say, we have enough to proceed beyond a reasonable doubt. And their ethical obligations require them to assess a case pre-filing for a determination of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, as opposed to just probable cause. And I am telling you that that DNA on that sheet next to or underneath one of the victims is enough to sink him.
The judge basically said he doesn't know if he's going to schedule a Franks hearing. He doesn't know if they've met their burden. And so, he's going to have to go back and review this, but he asked them for dates in the next few weeks in case he does.
So now there is speculation, and Angel D, shout out Angel D, brought this to my attention, that there is speculation that the judge is going to grant them a Franks hearing. Now, I personally would be very surprised about that. Even to have a Franks hearing, there's a pretty high bar of evidence that the defense argument has to present, and they're not typically granted, but apparently, I think what Angel D said, and maybe you can clarify if I'm saying this wrong here, the judge's schedule is cleared for some amount of time, as is the prosecution's docket. I'm not sure, but I guess there's speculation out there. I was surprised to hear this, but after Angel D told me this, I was kind of searching around, and people are thinking that, oh my God, he is going to grant a Franks hearing. So, a Franks hearing by law should be made a matter of, it should be public, but I don't know how that, jives with, this massive broad and strict gag order that's, covering this case in the proceeding. So, I mean, all that is yet to be determined.
Has scheduled this hearing. What's your feeling on that? I mean, because Ann Taylor threw a lot out there. She's talking about the cell phone information, that was misrepresented as her client stalking the victims, all of this stuff. She's talking about, other people's blood, male blood found in the house. The prosecution had said in some prior documents that it wasn't suitable to upload the CODIS. They couldn't even identify who it may have belonged to, that type of thing.
Well, for purposes of due process and judicial ethics, judges should not announce ahead of time which way they are leaning without having reviewed everything, without having heard both sides. The judge was smart by saying, we're going to set this for a hearing, and he'll reserve ruling until he has read and heard all argument. So for now, I think what he's saying is, you better bring me something, because based on what I'm seeing and what I'm reading, you haven't met your burden. But he didn't quite go that far with saying that, because if we're honest, it would be unethical. And I think it would violate canons of ethics to rule before you've even read and heard everything. So the judge was smart.
Judge Hippler did seem to throw some cold water on the IgG arguments, although he did seem to think that they violated the terms of service. Violating terms of service for genetic genealogy databases is a whole lot different, Philip. Than violating somebody's Fourth Amendment rights. So he did push both sides on that issue, but he didn't seem to really be buying what the defense was selling.
No, there's a few buckets of remedies here when police do things unlawfully. Number one, there is suppression of evidence in a criminal case. Or number two, if the violation of whatever the police did amounted to a breach of a contract, that's a separate analysis in the civil context. Or if what the police did merely amounted to a civil tort, that is a different analysis. The question here is, did Bryan Kohberger even have legal standing to suppress the IgG evidence? And even if he did, let's just pretend that he did. In other words, he has a subjective and objective expectation of privacy in the data in those genealogy databases. The question then becomes, is there an exception to the exclusionary rule? In other words, something that would undo the taint of the poisonous tree caused by the police misconduct. And the court's going to look to various exceptions, such as the attenuation doctrine. Let's just pretend that what the police did was illegal and they came up with this whole family tree. The question then is the discovery of the family tree so far attenuated from the illegality that you can deny suppression? And I think it's very possible that if the court finds that Bryan does have standing, that the discovery of the genealogy type genetic data is so far attenuated from the illegality that exclusion is not the remedy. And you have to understand, there's always going to be some type of remote discovery of things flowing from an illegality. That's the whole point. It would be different if they found his DNA directly in the database. Then the question becomes, did they need a warrant? But the fact that they found somebody else's DNA that had some matching genetic components to him, I think the court's going to find that that is enough, not enough, rather, to say that suppression is the remedy. And frankly, I'm going to bet that this judge finds that he doesn't even have standing. And the reason why is that the right to suppress has to be personal to him, and that the thing that he is seeking to suppress has to be personal to him. The courts have held since Rakes versus Illinois that if the item that's being searched or seized is not yours, you don't have standing. You cannot assert the rights of third parties who may have had a privacy violation. Unless those people are being prosecuted and unless those people seek to enforce their rights, some unrelated defendant has no remedy.
Well, we will keep an eye on it and see what Judge Hippler decides. Philip Dubé, thank you so much.
Take care.
And that's it for this episode of Crime Fix. I'm Anjanette Levy. Thanks so much for being with me. I'll see you back here next time.
Okay, sorry. I was, hold up. A lot going on here. Hold it. Wait just a second. Okay, I was just watching this video that McJay had sent me and wondering if I was going to show it or not. I didn't get through it, so I'm just going to show it. It's so the channel Jules, oh my God, it was Jules of All Trade. Is that? I like her channel. I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. I don't know why I am. Jules of All Trade, right? That's the name of Jules. I just know her as Jules. I think it's Jules of All Trade. She played this video earlier, and she mentioned this channel again in her reaction video to this, saying, you know, there's channels like Watsy. Well, here, I'll play you what she said. think it's right around here. It's right around 4 minutes and something or other. Let me just bring this into the stream rather than trying to quote her inaccurately. And then I'll play the clip. She played some, I don't know what this is about, but we're going to check it out together. It has to do with topic at hand, of course.
There's channels like Watch the Obsession that have
I hit it right on the nose. There's channels like Watch the Obsession.
Has apparently been talking to frats and stuff, or at least that's what they claim. And with that, there's also Hunter Chapin's name and 4 other females' names also involved in that. And I'm not going to go through all the other people's names, but the 2 Hunters are very well known. Now, apparently in this video, the person that you sort of see in like a light pink color hoodie, sort of like facing the camera direction, that's supposed to be Hunter frickin' Chapin, Ethan's brother. I don't know if that's actually true. That's just the speculation. I don't know. But what's interesting about
Well, she was on fire about this video that I'm about to play right now here. And this is from a TikToker named London's Notebook. Jules on Fire was like, Jules on Fire. Jules was on fire about this chick, okay? I'm not really totally even sure what she says. It's only a 4-minute video, but let's just see what all the brouhaha is about here, okay? Her attitude in the beginning does come off a little like off-putting to me, but I'm not sure what the body of what she's saying here is. So again, let's check it out together. Let's do it together.
Light with the police.
How do I make this full screen? I always just trouble with TikTok. I don't understand you, TikTok. Just be more like YouTube, man. Please be more like YouTube. Let me see if I hold it. Let me just try to make this more favorable for us. I don't know if I can, though. I'm going to see what I can do. Isn't there a way to make this
already informed?
I don't know. Here you go. This is what this
in this
does.
video, I'm going to show you video footage perspective that brings to light what the police have already informed the public of. But before I share with you, you need to understand a few things and why I'm doing this. Police told us that friends did gather before the 911 call was made, and multiple people were already at the house when the police arrived on scene. They referred to these individuals as friends. I'm going to share a point of view from a friend of the victims and surviving roommates who came to me because she felt safe in the way that I talk about her friends and how I loudly defend facts first over harmful speculation. Use your common sense and your own logic. Why I'm making this video. Just like when the media tells us that they have unknown source and they give you details, this is no different than that. I have witnessed and learned from the beginning of this case how dangerously far people take speculation. We have witnessed how people have called this house a rug house. They say their friends came before police to clear the scene, or how people even took Kaylee's ex-boyfriend Jack and labeled him as the killer with having zero proof. Point of this friend's perspective that I share with you is to hopefully remind people of the rawness and the realness of what it's like to witness your friends being brutally murdered, to witness your friends isolate themselves from what they survived, and how these real people have to deal with how ugly complete strangers can be.
All right, now I just want to say this at this point. Now, the reason that I started speaking out originally about what the 2 student sources we have from the University of Idaho who are friends with Ethan Chapin is, the reason we started speaking out about that is kind of exactly what she's hitting on right here. And I'm not saying I agree with what she's about to say, because I don't know what she's about to say, but it is how, people are saying that, people knew, in the early morning hours, like hours and hours before 911 was called, just short of noon, smack dab in the middle of the day, that this had happened, and they had gone and cleaned up things and and all this stuff. Oh, people knew at 6 a.m. People knew at 8 a.m. and nobody called 911. There's this big cover up on the behalf of the friends and the students, and the frats were involved. So this narrative that was out there, first of all, to me, was clearly manufactured. And I believe that I can understand what the sources are. The people that came out to speak about this were like the WSU Kim and, some other people. That narrative was extremely hurtful to the friends of the victims, to the families, specifically to the Chapin family, and and Hunter and Maisie Chapin, who were there. Hunter Chapin, who was just a matter of 100-something yards away from this house. That all of these people, that they knew about this tragedy happening hours and hours before it happened, and they did jack shit while their friends just laid there and bled to death, or their deceased bodies just laid there for hours and hours and nobody did anything. That was a catalyst that started the conversation between myself and these guys to say, do we need to come out and make some statement on the behalf of truth to put an end to this bullshit narrative? So I just wanted to say that at this point.
To people's real pain. Going to play the clip and explain the point of view of this friend.
Wait, whose dog is it? Kaylee's.
Now you know that those aren't bags of trash, but exactly what the police said. You see friends of the victims. Here is the perspective of the person recording. It was the morning before. We really knew what was happening. She was in her apartment with a view directly down Queen Road, and she saw cop cars pulling in. Everyone was looking over there to figure out who was missing from the group of friends outside. People gathered by the curb, and in the clip, you heard her and her friend who see a dog but didn't see Kaylee. She shared how it was hard to watch from afar, and the university had sent out an email to the students, and even Laytall sending out a text that there had been a homicide on King Road. Friend watched police talk to Bethany, watched police take the Ring camera from the blue house, watched as they took Murphy out of the house into a cop car, and claims that she saw Jack arrive on scene. The cops asking him to show his hands. She said every male, including Jack, were all asked by police to walk with their hands in front of them like they were holding a platter. Police were looking for visible wounds. Jack went to the police station for questioning and ended up being able to take Murphy. This person's direct quote is, "I hope that this helps people understand the pure fear and anxiety, knowing that something terrible had happened to our friends." And shared her social medias with me, and she shared her Greek life that she shared with Xana, Dylan, Bethany, Kaylee, Maddie. Many people's lives have changed. And she told me that Dylan and Bethany are such sweet girls, and it's hard to witness what their friends continue to endure considering what they all have been through. And in this quick
okay, and that's what I heard too from the students. And aside, in addition to the two main student sources that we have that are friends with Ethan Chapin, by virtue of them, I have talked to other students, and by all accounts, because Dylan's really gotten beaten up in this. They said especially Dylan was just the sweetest, most docile, just very shy and very kind and sweet person that you could ever imagine. So I'm just telling you, that is what I've heard from people that actually know her.
Second clip, you see what she told me, someone in a pink hoodie. She says that it's Hunter Chapin. And maybe you think that this clip isn't anything, but this clip takes the only photo that floats out on the internet, and it brings you a video perspective, a friend's perspective. So when people consume content or make any comments publicly about this investigation, I want to remind you, the people that are reading your comments are actually friends, sorority sisters, family members. And I hope that this message is received about how harmful speculation can be in the sense of hurting people even more than they're already hurting. And to anyone who takes this clip, whether you screen record it, because I'm not new to the internet, so be it. But you best make sure that if you screen record this video of information that's not out there and you try to twist a narrative from this friend's perspective, I'm going to have something to say about that. Thank you.
What? I don't really understand. What was the point of that? I don't get it.
Howard Blum believes that Bryan Kohberger targeted.
What happened there?
Madison Mogan.
Yeah, what happened there? Hold it. Stop sharing that. I don't understand what happened there. That was Ethan? Hunter? Angel says, "Oh, does this clip not show the garbage truck emptying the large blue garbage container?" I don't get that. I just don't get it, guys. Timmy Lynn, I tend to agree with this. She says to Kylie, I 100% agree. But I think two things can be true at the same time. And I think that about what you're about to say here could very likely be true. In fact, based on what I've learned, again, I think it could very likely be true. Let's just say that. 1122 King Road could have been a rug house, but it could have also had nothing to do with a crime. Maybe that's why Bryan Kohberger chose this house. Dun, dun, dun. Very well said. Great theorizing. I tend to agree with that totally. Yeah. Cloughoff says, so if I'm understanding, there were people at the scene when the emergency services arrived. Whoa. I'm not sure if that's the case, but listen, what happened was it was, around the time when, Ethan was supposed to show up back to the fraternity house to do some studies with, a group of people there. It was some of his fraternity brothers, I think his brother and a couple of girls. And, at the University of Idaho and specifically in certain fraternities and sororities, and Sigma Chi is one of these fraternities. It's important for all their members to do well academically, because only if everybody does well academically can they stay in good standing with both the university and the Greek overseeing body for either males or females, sororities or fraternities. So they would mandate having these study sessions, and they were, well, by virtue of being mandated, they were mandatory. Is that redundant or what? But it was really strange that Ethan wasn't there. So people started calling him, like, where is he? What's going on? Why is he not there? Like, nobody misses these things. Certainly he never misses these things. He's a very, conscientious person and student. And that started to alarm people. So, people started calling, wondering where he was. Maybe they started calling the other roommates, being like, where's, things were supposed to start happening that morning, that Sunday morning, that weren't happening, which of course raised alarm and speculation in the minds of, the other students that these victims were supposed to be seeing that morning for engagements that they would typically be making without fail. Angel says, Kelly, there's a full video of that clip that shows the garbage trucks taking garbage away. That was a big issue at the start of the case. Clothes, weapons, evidence could have been in that garbage. Okay, okay, cool. That's the only version I have. If you have a link, definitely send it to me. Yeah. And Kelly just clarifies, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Both of those things can be true. It could be a potential connection for BK, especially with his history of use of H. But I also do not think that those girls were doing any kind of heavy crap he was. It's like all a different vibe. I agree with that. Is that a rug house, Knox Randall? I don't know. I mean, I personally put what you're talking about sort of in a different category, but I don't know if everybody does. So, okay. Angel D says, the video that I saw showed them sitting outside, but the creator focused on the garbage truck to prove potential evidence was taken away before forensics arrived, allegedly. Maybe it's not real. Huh. Always thought Maddie was a target. I tend to lean that way as well, Kylie Cosmo. And then Tammy Lynn says, maybe that's why law enforcement has always said the house was targeted instead of the victims, especially since they've said that since the very beginning of the case. Really good point. Tony, I'm so glad you're here again. Tony, how are you doing? Thanks for being here. Says, I always thought that Maddie was the one targeted and the others were in the wrong place at the wrong time. All right. Now I'm going to bring it. Yeah, I tend to agree with that too. Now I'm going to bring in another clip that we're just going to listen to briefly here. Oh, shit. I bookmarked it, but I think I lost. Let me try to remember. Shoot, I'm going to have to look it up again. Hold up. Just wait for a minute, guys, because I'm going to have to search the transcript here. Just give me 1 second, okay? Control F for find, and I'm going to look up the word bag. All right. All right. Hold it. Gotta scroll down, scroll down. It's not one of the first ones. Saw a bag of clothing, season, bag, privacy, bag. Hold it. Okay, here we go. All right. So this is at 1:37:14. I'm going to go back a little for context. Oh, it's kind of right after the clip that I was already playing. All right. Let's start right here. All right. Sorry. Sorry, I didn't bring it into the stream. Just one second. Sorry about that. Come on, baby. Let me go back just a little bit again. Okay.
Match to a person from a object likely associated with a murder weapon. I've not yet a magistrate would not find that probable cause.
If the magistrate had the other facts, I think the magistrate would have some serious concerns and would not find probable cause. Your Honor, the vehicle, and I know the court knows what I'm going to say. There's not DNA in that vehicle that was brought out from a crime scene. This absolutely matters, Your Honor. If you want to go to the state's theory, right, with their videos that they've talked about, they told the magistrate about, that this is the video, this is what matters. It parks at this certain time, it leaves at this certain time. If you want to go to that, there's about 13 minutes of time, right? 13 minutes between the last time you see the car and the next time you see the car on the video. And if you end up with a car that's searched, and I mean searched and taken apart, the brake is taken apart, the gear shift is taken apart, the key fob is checked, there's no blood on any of that, none. The steering wheel, there's some kind of spray all over the interior of the car to check for it. There's no blood. I think that there's context that the magistrate should have known that's absolutely exculpatory to Mr. Kohberger, and it matters a whole lot.
I'm not saying it's not potentially exculpatory. I'm just saying I'm not sure how knowing that in light of a positive DNA connection would cause any magistrate to say, well, okay, I guess there's no probable cause here because you couldn't find other connection to forensic evidence. When there are other things in the affidavit or affidavits at that point that could explain that, including the use of covering clothing and covering gloves and all that could be put into a bag real quick on the way out that was in one of the affidavits.
Okay, so there it is. So if y'all heard this, so the judge just ended that statement by saying that was in one of the affidavits. It was in one of the affidavits. He's referring to the affidavits for this case, right? It was in one of the affidavits. So wait, what did judge say?
Any magistrate to say, well, okay, I guess there's no probable cause here because you couldn't find other connection to forensic evidence. When there are other things in the affidavit or affidavits at that point that could explain that, including the use of covering clothing and covering gloves and all that could be put into a bag real quick on the way out that was in one of the affidavits.
So he says the use of covering clothing and covering gloves and all that could easily be put into a bag on the way out that was in one of the affidavits. What? So is he saying, and what do you guys think about this, that there was a mention of covering clothing and covering bags and all of that, or covering gloves and all that could be put into a bag on the way out, as was mentioned in an affidavit? And maybe that is Angel D, where it would be so pertinent that the possible garbage truck that was in front of 1122 King Road that picked up garbage and then took off, that dumped the dumpster that was outside of 1122 King Road right into the garbage truck that took off. Maybe that's where we make the connection as to why that's so important, right? So let's just hear that again one more time. Have you guys heard this yet?
Saying I'm not sure how knowing that in light of a positive DNA connection would cause any magistrate to say, well, okay, I guess there's no probable cause here because you couldn't find other connection to forensic evidence. When there are other things in the affidavit or affidavits at that point that could explain that, including the use of covering clothing and covering gloves and all that could be put into a bag real quick on the way out that was in one of the affidavits. I guess, and I don't intend to argue with you about it.
Well, I think that's something really serious. Anjanette Levy, girl, we just watched your 9 points. You didn't include that one. Where's that one, Anjanette Levy? What do you guys think about that? Let me just hear what he has to say here as he follows up. In PKC, what is it you're referring to? I would love to check it out. Give me some keywords or a timestamp and let's look at it.
I understand your other arguments, but when you get to once they have the actual DNA evidentiary DNA, it seems to me that it's an uphill battle to say there's not probable cause at that point.
Well, Your Honor should never get to that question, but I'm going to answer it for you. But you should never get to that question because you should have already found that AT&T 1 and AT&T 2 were terrible, and there's no probable cause for those, and they just build on each other. So you should find that the very first one lacked probable cause, and then everything else does as well. But let me answer your question there. If the magistrate judge had been told there's unknown male B in blood in the house attached to the handrail, that might have made more of a difference to her. Maybe a sheath that can be carried to the house and blood in the house that's not the same, maybe that matters. And then maybe the car being completely empty of any blood DNA connection, maybe that matters a little bit more. Maybe
Well, I'm just not sure why it matters for probable cause, but I think we're talking over each other, so I'll let you just go on.
Okay.
He's annoyed with her.
I don't think probable cause is in a vacuum. I think probable cause isn't one thing. I hope it's not one thing. I hope there has to be a little bit more than one thing, especially when you've got another thing that's the same as the one thing.
Well, that's what Carrie and I were
said I wouldn't do this. I'm
laughing
going to do
about.
it anyway
Let's
because
listen to that again. This is just a great statement by Ann Taylor. Bring it, girl. Okay.
Unknown male B in blood in the house attached to the handrail, that might have made more of a difference to her. Maybe a sheath that can be carried to the house and blood in the house that's not the same, maybe that matters. And then maybe the car being completely empty of any blood DNA connection, maybe that matters a little bit more.
Well, I'm just not sure why it matters for probable cause, but I think we're talking over each other, so I'll let you just go on.
Okay. I don't think probable cause is in a vacuum. I think probable cause isn't one thing. I hope it's not one thing. I hope there has to be a little bit more than one thing, especially when you've got another thing that's the same as the one thing.
Well,
something about a thing, especially when you've got one thing that's the same as the other thing. Like, what, girl? What are you saying?
I said I wouldn't do this, but I'm going to do it anyway because you brought up blood DNA of an unknown individual that was found, I think, on the handrail.
Yes.
Doesn't that necessarily not exclude Mr. Kohberger? What it may do is suggest there might be a potential other person in addition involved if you assume that that blood was related to the victims and not some earlier event in the house.
If what the court is saying is exactly why the magistrate needed to know that. Is there another explanation here? I've got this sheath, but there are all these other things that if I know about them matter. What's the other explanation? What's going on with this investigation? What's happening here? That's exactly the point, Your Honor.
All right. Now, I just want to answer this question from the narrator. It says, okay, I have a question. I brought it up earlier. Doesn't his DNA link him to the sheath? Because I've seen news reports, it does, but also reads it's a near match. I don't know what that means. Yeah, so the DNA when they took Bryan Kohberger's DNA via a buccal swab from the inside of his cheek and they did the analysis, it matched Bryan Kohberger to that DNA that is on the inside snap of the knife sheath, excluding every other person on the earth, with a 53 octillion chance of it being Bryan Kohberger over anyone else on the earth. So that is pretty damn conclusive. We can say his DNA was on the knife sheath. I mean, that is so. That's a fact. Now, whether you want to argue that his DNA got on that knife sheath in a way other than him committing the crime and having had touched that knife sheath, because the knife, the K-bar knife that was used to commit these atrocities was in that knife sheath and it was brought to that house by Bryan Kohberger, you can go ahead and make that argument. But there is no doubt, it is a fact that the DNA on the inside snap of that knife sheath, that single source DNA, was Bryan Kohberger's. Right. So technically, statistically, in statistical probability, there's no such thing as a certainty. So that's where the near match comes from. But when people say near match in like casual conversational language, it doesn't really translate to the idea of in statistical probability, there is no such thing as an absolute. You know what I mean? Now, since we brought up Hunter Chapin, I just want to play this little 4-minute video, 3 minutes and 45-second video that I made a really long time ago. 5,000 of you watched it, which is kind of low for a video that's 2 years old for this case. So I don't think a lot of you have seen this. It is a statement from Ethan Chapin's brother, Hunter. It's a post from him speaking about the investigation. So let me know if you've seen this before. As far as the victims' families are concerned, most of what the public knows comes from Kelly Gonsalves's family, primarily her father, Steve, and also her mother, Christy, and her sister, Olivia, who have been outspoken in the media. Recently, Ben Mogan, Maddie's father, came out and said something that rings to be quite the opposite of what the Gonsalves family has been saying. And there's no judgment here. I'm just letting you guys know what's out there. So Ben Mogan said, and this is to paraphrase, that he is very happy with the way he has been briefed on the investigation. He said that someone from the investigation, an official from the investigation, calls him on a daily basis and updates him on what is going on in the case, on any progress that is being made, and offers him some details that keep his mind at ease. Again, he said he's very happy with the way the progress is going in the investigation. This is a far departure from Kelly Gonsalves's family, who has said that they haven't heard from investigators for days at a time, which I personally found to be pretty off-putting, particularly when Kelly's father, Steve Gonsalves, first came out and said this.
Sir, when was the last time you talked with law enforcement about the case?
Well, we just had a vacation. Law enforcement told me that they were going to drop off a little bit and not to expect the same type of communication that I had gotten before. They passed it on to another person. So basically, long story short, it was Wednesday, 5 p.m. was the last time that they reached out to me. So, yeah, that's rough.
I personally think it is a job of an investigator to keep the family apprised of what's going on when they are enduring such a tragic loss, like a murdered family member or, my God, a murdered child. We've also heard Ethan Chapin's parents speak out. We've heard Xana Kernodle's parents speak out separately. And now we have a post from Ethan Chapin's brother, Hunter, that says, "They don't and they won't. The families want a conviction, not an arrest. The police and FBI are not here to please curious minds. They are building a case to make sure whoever did this is convicted and the family gets some sort of closure, if at all possible. I don't think I ever will." Oh, I so badly wish I could just come on here and blurt out everything I know that the public wants to hear. But because I respect my family and Ethan, I will hold on to it until the time is right. Oh my gosh, I get choked up just reading that. The poor guy. I mean, it's his triplet brother. My gosh. So I don't know. I haven't really seen a post like this yet from a family member. And I know many of us out here are getting a little frustrated or just, a feeling of helplessness that it seems the investigation isn't going anywhere. But perhaps this post should give us some hope. I don't know. What do you guys? Chapin's brother, Hunter, that says, They don't and they won't. The families want a conviction, not an arrest. The police and FBI are not here to please curious minds. They are building a case to make sure whoever did this is convicted and the family gets some sort of closure, if at all possible. I don't think I ever will. Oh, I so badly wish I could just come on here and blurt out everything I know that the public wants to hear. But because I respect my family and Ethan, I will hold on to it until the time is right. Oh my gosh, I get choked up just reading that. The poor guy. I mean, it's his triplet brother. My gosh. So I don't know. I haven't really seen a post like this yet from a I'm sorry. Okay. Tammy Lynn says, where are all the victims' advocates, though? Good question. Where are the victims' advocates? I understand the detective should honestly be focused on the case and not how the families feel as much. Very good point. Technically not their job to. You're right. You're right. You know, I said I think that it should be their job to apprise the families. Okay. I think you're more right than what I said. It should be someone's job to take care of these families. It should be someone's job. I mean, part of seeking justice, part of our law enforcement and justice process is to take care of people, to take care of victims, and to take care of families. And that should always be done, in my opinion. Angel D says, yes, thank you for confirming that comment. When people say things about the Chapins, I remind them of this comment. And people say that's not legit. Yeah, I don't know. I can't stand the things that people say about the Chapin family. I've gotten to know a little more about maybe the Chapin family than most people did. And they are very kind, good-hearted people who, you know, when like Ethan's mom says, you know, that they aren't going to necessarily attend the trial, that they don't need to be up on every single thing that's happening, that they need to focus on doing good in this world and, you know, raising their surviving children. I mean, there's Macy and Hunter who they have to take care of, who suffered this intolerable loss of losing their triplet brother. You know, like they want to do good things for themselves, for their family, for their surviving children, and for Ethan's memory moving forward. And for them, being fixated and perseverating on every detail of this trial is not the way to do that. And if you don't respect that, I just don't know what your problem is, quite honestly. I don't get it personally. So I'm sorry if you think that's a strong statement, but that's how I feel about it. Kylie says, I can't even imagine. My sisters are my best friends. Siblings are so special. I can't even think about it. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, crazy stuff. Shoot, I kind of lost my train of thought. Where am I going from here? Oh, I know, but I hadn't found it yet. Sorry, dang it. Oh, I know. All right, let's take a look at this. I was going to play a video that I had made before mapping out Bryan Kohberger's trail and his path from Pullman, Washington to Moscow, Idaho. But I think some of you have probably seen it. I don't know, maybe have, maybe haven't. But this is just a different video. This is the 222 University of Idaho killings mapped by a forensic expert, murder maps from the Daily Mail. I thought this was kind of interesting. I caught at least the beginning of it later. Let's watch it together and see what this guy has to say. If you get bored with it, let me know, and we will just move on. I think you'll like it, though. Always just want to give you what you guys want. That's what I'm here for, baby. Give you what you want, as long as it's truthful and seeking justice and factual, which you know it's going to be here.
I've had a couple of crime scenes. Murderers come back. They'll come back to the scene. I've had a couple of crime scenes where murderers actually show up back at the crime scene while I'm there. The game plan was to go there to kill one person. And then you go into that bedroom and that person's next to...
So obviously he believes it was Maddie, right? He says, obviously the game plan was to go there to get one person. They show Maddie's window with the M and her boots, her pink boots that she loves so much.
Somebody else. So now you got to kill the second person. Now you hear noise downstairs and now your attention's drawn to them. And so that becomes victim 3 and 4. This case is the ultimate horror story. This is not like what they call a misdemeanor homicide, where it's like an active criminal that gets killed. These are just normal people living their lives. This is Murder Maps.
Today we'll be plotting out every detail of the University of Idaho murders on a map.
I'm Matthew Steiner. I'm a senior crime scene analyst retired from the New York City Police Department. Let's start with the night of the murder. With any investigation, there is a timeline. What happens before the crime, what happens during the crime, and then what happens after the crime.
On the night of November 12, 2022, University of Idaho undergraduate students and best friends Madison Mogen and Kaylee Gonsalves went out to the Corner Club Bar in Moscow, Idaho.
So here's the Corner Club Bar.
Meanwhile, Ethan Chapin and Xana Kernodle, also students at the University of Idaho, went to a frat party at the Sigma Chi House, approximately 1.4 miles across town.
Madison and Kaylee are at the Grub Truck here, right down the block from the Corner Club Bar.
At 1:40 a.m., Madison and Kaylee left the bar and were captured on video at a local food vendor, Grub Truck, a 7-minute walk away. The men seen here in the footage of the girls at Grub Truck are not considered suspects, according to authorities.
We have suspects originally that come up that are...
Oh, Angel, do you mean this clip? They got a lot wrong in this clip? Because if they did, there's no point in watching it. Is that what you're talking about? I'm going to wait for you to respond. So respond, Angel. I'm just kidding. Yeah. Are you talking about this clip? They got too much wrong, darling? Jody says, I don't think he went there for Maddie only. It doesn't make sense. You don't think so? What do you think, Jody? PKC says to the narrator, she called once because oh, you're talking about your daughter, your family that are around the age. Oh, they made a lot of errors. Okay. All right. Well, let me just keep playing it until I'll find something different then, because I don't want to play something with a bunch
from
of
the
errors.
Grub Truck video. So those two people come up in the investigation, of course, but investigators ruled them out pretty quickly. They're proven to be somewhere else during this crime.
All 4 victims returned home by around 2 a.m. that morning.
The murders happened here at 1122 King Road.
An hour after the students returned home, a white Hyundai Elantra appeared in surveillance video in the neighborhood.
That's part of any investigation. You want to do what they call a surveillance canvas. Any cameras that could capture routes into, out of the crime scene or at the crime scene, those need to be analyzed. You want to see who's there, who's coming and going, and certainly in this case, vehicles that are traveling in that area. A white Hyundai Elantra is seen several times circling this area of 1122 King Road.
Despite the house being on a dead-end street, the car could be seen passing the home several times that night, including once at around 4:04 a.m.
So there's AI software that can identify vehicles, looking at the shape of it, the size of it, the number of doors, and it gives you possibilities of what that vehicle could be, and sometimes even model ranges. So I think this was like a 2011 to 13 Hyundai Elantra, white 4-door sedan. Now let's take a look at the floor plan of the house.
1122 King Road in Moscow was a 3-story, 6-bedroom home. All 4 victims were asleep on the 2nd and 3rd floors the night of the murders.
2 of the victims were found here on the 3rd floor. These victims were Madison and Kaylee. 2 of the victims were found here on the 2nd floor. This was Ethan and Xana. It is believed that the killer entered the home through the sliding glass door here on the 2nd floor.
Oops. Oh, hold up. All right, so we're going to put a video in that is factually accurate. You better believe that. It's my video because Angel said there's a lot of mistakes in this one, so we don't want to watch crap. All right. Sorry, crap. See you later. Move over. Bacon. Here comes something leaner. Remember that for, I don't know what it was, some product like bacon, some bacon-like product. November 12th, going to the early morning hours of November.
About, they may have an alibi. We think they may have. No. Today they file an actual alibi.
I'm going to be bold and say this video is going to give you much more detail about where Bryan Kohberger was the late night hours of November 12th, going to the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022, than the defense has put forth in the court documents for sure. We're going to follow Mr. Kohberger to some places I don't think any of y'all have gone before. Just wait. So let's talk about what we know and the big questions that still remain, including, is his so-called alibi even possible? Bryan Kohberger's defense team, in a court document dated August 2nd, 2023, put forth the most explicit alibi that has been given for Bryan Kohberger. And don't hold on to your hat or anything. It is not too overwhelming. The document says Mr. Kohberger had a long habit of going for drives alone. Often he would go for drives at night. He did so on late November 12th and into November 13th, 2022. Mr. Kohberger is not claiming to be at a specific location at a specific time. At this time, there is not a specific witness to say precisely where Mr. Kohberger was at each moment of the hours between late night, November 12th, 2022, and early morning, November 13th, 2022. He was out driving during the late night and early morning hours of November 12th to 13th, 2022. Towards the end of the document, the defense sums up his alibi, saying Mr. Kohberger was out driving alone. Corroborating evidence may come from cross-examination of state's witness. Corroborating evidence may come from presentation of defense experts. So let's take a look at this idea that the defense puts forth that Bryan Kohberger had a habit of driving around aimlessly in the middle of the night, but he was not at 1122 King Road. Let's take a look at that compared with what the cell phone evidence tells us. In the cell phone evidence, just the cell phone evidence that we know right now in this case is very, very revealing. So let's take a look at the cell phone movements before and after the tragedy. At 2:42, the defendant's phone pings at 1630 Northeast Valley Road, apartment G2, and Pullman, Washington. That's his home, of course. And then for about 5 minutes, the movement of the cell phone is consistent with Kohberger leaving his apartment in Pullman, heading towards Moscow. However, we know that his phone stops connecting to any cellular resources at 2:48 a.m. After that time, Kohberger's phone does not report to the network again until approximately 4:48 a.m. Bryan Kohberger's number does not report to the network again until approximately 4:48 a.m., at which time it utilized cellular resources that provide coverage to ID State Highway 95 south of Moscow, ID near Blaine, Idaho, which is north of Genesee, he notes. Between 4:50 a.m. and 5:26 a.m., the phone utilizes cellular resources that are consistent with the number of Bryan Kohberger, traveling south. The ID is State Highway 95 to Genesee, Idaho, then traveling west towards Uniontown, Idaho, and then north back into Pullman. So guys, that right there is in part how, well, it is how they determined the convoluted route that Bryan Kohberger allegedly took home from Moscow, Idaho to Pullman, Washington. It should also be noted that this route home from Moscow to Pullman that took about 45 minutes would typically take 10 to 15 minutes if you took the most direct transit route available. So obviously there was a reason for Bryan Kohberger, allegedly, to take this long route home rather than the far more direct way that would take at least half an hour less time to travel. At approximately 5:30 a.m., Bryan Kohberger's number is utilizing resources that provide coverage to Pullman, Washington, and consistent with the phone traveling back to Kohberger's residence. And then it says Kohberger's number movements are consistent with the movements of the white Elantra that is observed traveling north on Stadium Drive at approximately 5:27 a.m. And of course, that observation was made by security camera footage. So now we can pause and ask the question, why did Bryan Kohberger take that route back from Moscow to Pullman, the route that would have taken 45 to 50 minutes rather than the more direct 10-minute route, unless he was just out, enjoying his habit, his habitual joyride in the middle of the night? Well, what we learn about the movement of Bryan Kohberger's cell phone during the day of November 13th, 2022, after the tragedies occurred, might give us some indication. So cellular records show that Bryan Kohberger's phone was traveling from Pullman, Washington to Lewiston, Idaho via U.S. Highway I-95. At approximately 12:36 p.m., his phone number utilized cellular resources that would provide coverage to Kate's Cup of Joe Coffee, located at 810 Port Drive in Clarkston, Washington. Surveillance footage from the U.S. Chef's store located nearby that location, the coffee shop, showed the white Elantra consistent with suspect vehicle number 1 drive past Kate's Cup of Joe at a time consistent with cellular data from Bryan Kohberger's phone number. At approximately 12:46 p.m., the 8458 phone then utilized cellular data in the area of Albertson's grocery store at 400 Bridge Street in Clarkston, Washington. And again, surveillance footage identified a car consistent with a white Elantra. And additionally, interior surveillance at that grocery store showed Bryan Kohberger walk through the store, purchase unknown items at the checkout, and leave at approximately 1:04 p.m. And then there is a map that depicts Kohberger's possible path of travel right here and in the probable cause affidavit. So now, my friends, when you break that down, they are putting Bryan Kohberger's cell phone pinging in a certain location with video camera surveillance footage of a car consistent with his white Elantra and the man himself, Bryan Kohberger, on that interior security camera footage of the grocery store. So now we have the phone, the car, and the man all together. Just in regards to the specific set of facts we are talking about, I think that's what we call a boom, right? Boom. Additional analysis of records for the 8458 phone indicated that between approximately 5:32 p.m. and 5:36 p.m., Kohberger's phone utilized cellular resources that provided coverage to Johnson, Idaho. His number then stops reporting to the network at approximately 5:36 p.m. to 8:30 p.m., and that's consistent with the phone being in the area that his phone traveled in the hours immediately following the suspected time the homicides occurred. So now what's happening is they are putting Bryan Kohberger in a location earlier in the evening on November 13th, 2022, with his phone turned off for a couple hours, that is the same location that went along that convoluted route that Bryan Kohberger took home from Moscow, Idaho to Pullman, Washington in the early morning hours of November 13th after the quadruple homicides. So what exactly was Bryan Kohberger doing there in that exact same location for a couple hours with his phone turned off? This is definitely a very interesting place to go for a joyride in the middle of the night. And then again, the next day, the early evening, just a few hours after, with both of these joyriding events bookending a horrific tragedy that occurred less than 10 miles away from his home. Pretty curious, don't you think? So this area that Bryan Kohberger drove through from Moscow back to Pullman, that convoluted 45 to 50-minute route rather than the direct 10-minute route, is the same place where his phone turned off for 3 hours from 5:36 p.m. the evening of November 13th for approximately 3 hours. It goes through what's known as the Lewiston-Clarkston Valley. And guys, this terrain is truly ranging and at times raw, and it really does go through the middle of nowhere. I mean, if you were looking for a place to lose evidence or a weapon that could connect you to an atrocious crime that was just committed, this just might be the place to do it. So let's take a look at this area that Kohberger drove through on his way back from Moscow to Pullman while he was joyriding, apparently, the 12th going into the 13th, and then that same area where his phone turned off for 3 hours the evening of the 13th, later in that day after those atrocities were committed.
Police say cell phone records show the suspect traveled roughly 35 miles away from Pullman hours after the students were killed. along Highway 195 to Clarkston, Washington. Unnerving for people who live in the small riverside communities of Clarkston and Lewiston, Idaho, about 30 minutes away from Moscow.
Yeah, it's just bizarre. I can't believe it so soon after the murder. It just kind of wonder what he was doing down here.
We've learned some of Kohberger's activities while he was in the Lewiston-Clarkston area. Around 12:36 on November 13th, investigators report his phone used cell resources near Kate's Cup of Joe on Port Drive in Clarkston. Employees at the coffee stand didn't want to comment on the case, but we do know from the affidavit, investigators were able to pull surveillance video from the neighboring chef store that show a white Elantra in this area around that time. And I want to provide some context. This area is just across the street from a popular Walmart. So this street, Port Drive, it's a busy one. About 10 minutes later, 12:46, the phone pinged a couple blocks away near Albertsons on Bridge Street. The affidavit says security video shows the suspect getting out of the white Elantra, walking inside the store, and making an unknown purchase. He left 4 minutes after 1 p.m.
You know, who knows what else he was up to? You know, they might put this whole thing together, and there might be all kinds of other stuff he's accused of on the way.
Angel, it's the Johnson that's closest to Moscow, Idaho. I may have said the wrong one, or I can't remember how that went, but I know what you're talking about. But it's the one that's closest to Moscow.
That same phone pinged near Johnson, Idaho, just after 5:30 that evening.
There we go.
The phone stopped reporting to the network from 5:36 to 8:30 p.m. The suspect's phone connected to a cell tower servicing the Moscow area on November 14th, but investigators don't believe the phone was in Moscow at that time. The phone didn't connect to any towers in Moscow since then.
It's definitely freaky. I mean, it's concerning just because, I don't know, it seems like they were, I mean, I understand they were trying to build their case against him or whatever, but it's freaky that he was able to get so far to the other side of the country.
To give y'all a really good idea of what it would be like traveling along the roads that were traveled by the suspect from Moscow to Pullman, this person from the channel, the Grass-Fed Homestead, has this video road trip to north central Idaho, Moscow, and Lewiston. So this is half the trip from Moscow to Pullman via the convoluted route that Bryan Kohberger allegedly took from Moscow back to Pullman after the tragedies occurred. So you're going to get an idea of what these roads. And the purpose of this is kind of like, you know, if Bryan Kohberger is the person who committed these atrocities and he did drive these like way out there routes, especially from Moscow back to Pullman, why did he do that? It doesn't really make sense unless he was allegedly trying to dispose of an alleged weapon. I'm just speculating. Are like. A link to this video and this channel are in the description. And thank you so much, the Grass-Fed Homestead.
Idaho side of the border is Moscow, Idaho, home of the University of Idaho. So it's a big college town. Just on the Washington side of the border is Pullman, Washington, home of Washington State University, another big college town. That also happens to be where Willow is getting her veterinarian care. I'm hoping to get some good shots of the town, but it's so foggy, I'm not sure how it's going to come out. So I may have to cut to some B-roll. The B-roll footage is footage I filmed about 4 years ago when I was passing through here with little buddy when he was probably about 4 at the time. Back behind me over here is the town of Lewiston. To get down there, you got to go down a pretty steep grade. You can see the river here behind me. I know the sun angle's terrible right now because the sun's behind me. It's the only way I can show you the town behind me. The river that you see here behind me is actually the river that Lewis and Clark came through on the expedition So this river's running west, but there's another river that's runs south off of that called the Snake River. And back in 2011, when little buddy was about 7 months old, he and I took a boat trip down that river. The big industry here in Lewiston, other than the shipping, which I hear the shipping is actually dying off. There's not as many boats coming in here for the inland seaport. But the big industry is the big paper mill right here. So it's the big building with the smokestacks and all the smoke going everywhere. It's the driving economy for this city. However, it's probably a very limiting factor for the city as well because it emits such a horrible, horrible stench. I have my heat turned off now, so I'm not sucking in the outside air, so I'm not smelling it quite yet. But last time I was in Lewiston, wow, dirty gym socks, and that's all from the paper mill. So I'm betting that keeps a lot of people away, a lot of people that are thinking about moving to this area. They just keep on going when they smell the fragrance of this town. Regarding the weather changes between the areas I've been in, we started, it was at 29 degrees. When I got just south of Moscow, it was 20 degrees. And now down here at a much lower elevation in the Lewiston area, the temperature is now up to 33 degrees, which again, for our European viewers would be just over 0 degrees Celsius. I almost made it to the traditional Catholic homestead. I'm following Dave right now because my GPS doesn't work and I don't know how to get there otherwise. So I'm following him in the rest of the way. I will be there momentarily. It is just like a sea of snow out here.
Like usual with this case, more questions than answers. You know, the questions are, why did Kohberger take that longer, convoluted ride home when he could have taken a straight shot from Moscow to Pullman? Is what we know based on Kohberger's location from locating his cell phone through cell phone tower triangulation and other means, including security camera footage, is that consistent with Kohberger's alibi that he enjoys driving around in the middle of the night? And that's what he was doing on the evening of November 12th going into November 13th, but was not at 1122 King Road. And also, given the route that you've seen that Kohberger took to drive home from Moscow to Pullman, with the mountains and rivers and valleys and barren lands and twists and turns and ranging elevation, do you think that is a perfect place to ditch incriminating evidence, possibly a weapon that would link you to the quadruple homicides of 4 college students in Moscow, Idaho? Please leave a comment letting us know what you think. We all want to know what you think. Please hit like and subscribe and check out that. Oops, sorry, I did it again. Just 1 minute. I'm looking for another video here. I'm scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. Great comments, guys. You guys have such awesome, insightful conclusions and questions and everything. Thank you so much for being here. Okay. So this is only a 5-minute video since I know Kylie was talking about, I saw some of you talking about this in chat, having to do with, whoops. Just 1 minute. The mad green. Oops. Man, where'd it go? Hold it. Yeah, where'd it go? Hold it. What? Hold it, hold it, hold it. Come on. What? It's so unfair, Ashley. Why are you doing this to me? I'm just kidding. Hold it. I just found the video, then I lost. Shut up, Ashley, for God's sake. Okay, sorry. Just had a little temper tantrum with Ashley Banfield there. Sorry about that. All right. Just 1 minute. I'm not a multitasker. Well, I can't talk and scroll and actually try to look at the same time. Just give me a sec. Oh, okay, here it is. Okay. Come on. Why did it do that again? Dude, this is something doesn't want us to watch this. Ew, it keeps doing that. What the fuck? I keep putting this video on. It keeps skipping. That's so weird. Okay. Hold up. You're not going to do this to me, YouTube. Screw that, man. I'm going to watch my own video. Hold. All right. Swap. Present. Video. It is the early morning hours of January 20th, 2023. It was just learned that in the late hours of yesterday, the judge on the case for the University of Idaho, Idaho for Tragedy and Murders, placed an even stricter gag order on all of the people that have to follow the gag order, anyone who is an officer of the court. So that's going to be the attorneys on the case, the tangential attorneys on the case, and a number of people that are under the rule of the court. They can't speak boo about anything having to do with this case. Is the reason why the reporting of People Magazine's Steve Helling, who has covered a number of topics on the University of Idaho tragedy. Steve Helling learned that on at least 2 occasions, Bryan Kohberger ordered vegan pizza from the Mad Greek restaurant, the same restaurant where Xana Kernodle, age 20, and Madison Mogen, age 21, were servers while they were attending school at University of Idaho. As you can see from the pictures here, the Mad Greek restaurant was not a large restaurant. It's a rather small and intimate dining location. So the question is, what interaction did Bryan Kohberger have with Xana Kernodle and Maddie Mogen? Here's the article from People Magazine by Steve Helling. Thank you, Steve Helling, for all the coverage you've done in this case. The headline says, Idaho suspect Bryan Kohberger visited restaurant where 2 victims worked at least twice before killings. According to a former employee at the Mad Greek restaurant in Moscow, Idaho, Bryan Kohberger came in at least twice to grab vegan pizza. And the article is, of course, by Steve Helling. In the weeks before the slayings of the 4 University of Idaho students last November, the man now accused of killing them allegedly ate at the restaurant where 2 of the victims worked. According to a former employee at the Mad Greek restaurant in Moscow, Idaho, Bryan Kohberger came in at least twice to grab vegan pizza. 2 of the victims, Madison Mogen and Xana Kernodle, were servers at the restaurant. It's unclear if either woman ever waited on Kohberger or if they interacted, but People confirms that a now deleted account that appeared to belong to Kohberger once followed both Mogen and Kernodle on Instagram, along with a 3rd female victim, Kelly Gonsalves. People has also confirmed via an investigator familiar with the case that law enforcement is aware of the restaurant visits and that investigators have interviewed employees and the owners of the Mad Greek. They've also collected surveillance video from the restaurant and surrounding businesses. The former employee tells People that there was nothing suspicious about Kohberger's visits to the Mad Greek and that he only stood out because he had a particular order, a strict vegan. Kohberger would check to make sure that his food had not come into contact with animal products. Now, from the many reports that we've heard from people that knew Kohberger, he was a strict vegan, and a report from his aunt told the world that one of the weird things about Bryan Kohberger was that He would not eat food that was even cooked in pans that had touched meat. So when he was at her house, the request was, that they had pans that meat was never cooked on, and they had to buy all new pans. One of the many strange things about Kohberger's. Other people that knew Kohberger, that worked with him, that were friends with him along the way, also said that he was a strict vegan for at least a period of time. So this makes a connection between Kohberger and at least two of the roommates. Many have speculated about the various social media accounts, the Facebook posts that some people think was Kohberger that revealed a lot about what happened in detail the night of the tragedy, the Papa Rogers account, the Reddit account. There have been so many different social media accounts that have caused people to wonder, is this Bryan Kohberger? It sounds an awful lot like him. He seems to be defending the person who committed these egregious crimes. And, well, this People magazine article by Steve Helling gives those speculations a great deal of credibility, in my mind at least. Please leave a comment below and let us know what you think. I'm sorry. So I keep doing that. I know some people are mentioning in chat the possible connections between Bryan Kohberger and the Mad Greek restaurant. So that video sort of summarized what some believe the connection is. And again, I found that article by Steve Helling to be credible. I haven't seen anything since, and I felt discredited. So, that's where I'm at with that. Now, I just want to go to some comments that I started. So, Sirius Black, and how are you doing, Sirius Black? Wonderful to see you, says, hi, Kelly, do you think that these last couple of hearings have benefited the state or the defense more? I'm curious to see if anyone has changed their mind about it. That's a great question, and I invite all of you in chat to respond to that question if you'd like. If anyone does want to come up on panel, you're welcome to. I'm going to be closing out pretty soon, but if you want to come up here and answer that question with your voice rather than typing it, I'll put the link in chat right here, okay? So my answer to that question is, it was after listening to the hearing proceedings and what parts of them that we were privy to, at least, I really got an idea of what the defense is going to be putting forth as reasonable doubt, trying to put forth as reasonable doubt to put in the minds of the jurors, fact finders in this case. And, having been someone who to this point, given the evidence that we know about, has believed that Bryan Kohberger is most likely guilty. And again, I said it before, I'll say it again. If there's evidence that shows otherwise, I will happily change my mind and tell the whole world. I'm not attached to it. It's not personal. It's not part of my identity. That at this point, I feel Bryan Kohberger is guilty, just using my logical mind. Given what we know right now, that's the way I lean. After the hearings and getting an idea of the reasonable doubt that the defense is going to put forward, I was like, oh my God, there actually might be reasonable doubt in this case. Because prior to that, I wasn't really feeling it. But, largely because of the vastly broad and strict gag order that doesn't allow us to really take in any new information. So it's like the opinion that you formed at some point, given what you know, it's kind of gets fixed or stagnant, right? Because we're not taking in anything new. Anything new that comes my way is tended to be in the form of theory, speculation, or false narrative on the behalf of those that like to spread around that crap. So I try not to really let it get into my brain. But actually hearing from Ann Taylor and getting a taste of what she's going to try to put forth as reasonable doubt made me feel like in the minds of the jurors, or maybe even in reality, there could be reasonable doubt. And that's not something that I'd really considered until I listened to those hearings. I said that on another channel. I think it was actually when I was watching Jewels of All Trade, and somebody in chat. Oh, I was actually in live chat. Was like, oh, you're really arriving late to the game. I was like, no, I'm not. I'm aware of everything that's going on. I just if I'm gonna I'm just weighing all the evidence as we know it to be so far in my mind very carefully. I'm not going to flip flop on it, but that's where I'm at. Not late to the game, just thinking critically. Come on up, Tammy Lynn. Come on up. Tell us what you think. I would love to hear what you think. You also have some questions. I think I started some of them that I want to address. Yes, I did. Oh, that was the one about your daughter. Oh, crap. There were some other things you asked that I wanted to get back to, but I didn't end up starring them. I started the one about your daughter's birthday. Again, Michaela, happy birthday to you. McJay says, I haven't changed my mind entirely, but I do think BK is more guilty. So she's leaning more in the direction of guilt. Yeah. Good night, Cuff You. And we're going to be heading out soon too, but it was great having you here in chat. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Let me see if I can find some of those other questions and whatnot that you guys had, or if you want to post new ones, go ahead. Let's see. I'm going to just have to scroll a little bit here. Scroll time. Scroll time. Let me entertain you while I scroll. Probably not, right? Let's see. So I'm actually there. I know there's a couple recent ones Tammy Lynn posted that I wanted to address. Let's see if I can find them. Scroll time. Scroll time. Interesting. And this is just something I saw that you said to Angel D. And that would still show no signs of forced entry. You're talking about the theory that he entered through the balcony, through either Kaylee or Maddie's room. Plus, still Mortensen never heard him walking up the stairs next to her. So I was wondering, when they were talking about in the hearing that, Dylan Mortensen said that Kaylee came down the stairs and ran back up. I mean, maybe she said Kaylee because maybe that's who she thought it was, not thinking that there was a killer in the house. Maybe that was really Bryan Kohberger she heard. I don't know. Just a thought. Just having thoughts. Just sharing them. Let's see. Scroll. Scroll, bitch. Scroll. Why is my scroller not scrolling? I hate it when that happens. Scroll. Not scrolling. There it is. Scrolling now. Scroll more. Okay. So warning label said, I think he's caught on camera several times at Student Center, also 609 Washington Street, Umpqua Bank, the video from the UPS truck. I think that's possible too. I've heard of some of those things. Some of them just recently, just as I told you, started looking into them. But I think those are really interesting leads, and I'm going to look into more. And I hope that we learn a lot more about that in the trial. Lots of talk about the cost of freshman housing and meal plans, no doubt. My son is 16. I'll be looking forward to all that crap soon. Yes, we've been stalked, and I'm sorry for those of you who have been stalked as well. It sucks, doesn't it? That's why I stopped being I used to work at a bar. I made mad money on the weekends, like $600 we're talking. It was like a lot of work, and it's really crazy. It was one of those bars where everyone at the time was doing ecstasy. Served a lot of water at some point, but anyway, I made a lot of money, but I also acquired some ecstasy laden stalkers. I don't know if they were doing that or not, but come on, scroll. Scroll. God, what's going on? My computer just gets tired like me after a certain time, I guess. I don't blame you, computer. I get tired too. I know it's hard being us, right? And Knox, Randall, if you're still here, I'm not sure about the person seen in the video walking towards the house at that time. I mean, that's a really good point, though. Oh, okay. So, Tammy Lynn, you said you wanted to know my perspective on this, that you and anaphylaxis were talking about. You said anaphylaxis, but would it be probable cause for the arrest warrant? Definitely for a warrant for his DNA, but I don't know if there's precedent of arrest off a potential DNA match. Well, I think it was a potential. Well, it was everything that was in the probable cause affidavit, David, also known as Exhibit A, right? So the potential DNA. I'm not sure. I might be picking up on your conversation at the wrong time. Let me see if I can get more context here. You know what? I'm just going back down to current time. If you guys have any questions or things you want to talk about, put it in chat because I'm being a little unsuccessful here. Tony says, I think a lot of things led to him being guilty in the minds of law enforcement, in my opinion. It seems that way, doesn't it? Yeah. I mean, it was a confluence of all those different factors that are discussed or touched upon in the probable cause affidavit or Exhibit A. Yeah, anaphylaxis is scary, right? Jeez. I bet when you were in law enforcement, you had to deal with a lot of stalker faces. McJay says, Kelly, why do you think they acquired Bryan Kohberger's Amazon subscriptions? What do you think that could be in them that is so relevant to the case? Well, I think it is either the weapon, less likely the weapon, but I think it might be more like things like maybe like the coveralls or the Dickies or whatever that, now the judge is kind of referring to, oh, well, it's easy. You could take off some like overclothing or, gloves and put them into a bag, as is mentioned in the affidavit. I'm paraphrasing there, but I think it could be something like that. Like, I think that I do believe, if it is in fact Bryan Kohberger, I do believe that there has to be a lot of evidence that was found that we do not know about. Again, see that overly broad and strict gag order that doesn't allow us to know anything. So I think it was something along those lines, but what do you guys think about that? It's a really good question. Jose Baez. Where's our boy Jose Baez? PKC, I think, is talking about the Moscow Police Department. If they went on their own, considering the lack of homicides in the area, I might worry. I don't see fumble with the ISP and FBI overlooking. Okay, so Tammy Lynn says, yeah, that's exactly what I meant. However, I don't remember anything being said about and hearing footsteps running up and down the stairs. What Ann Taylor said was that Dylan Mortensen reported that Kelly came down the stairs and then ran back up the stairs. I played that clip earlier. So that's what Ann Taylor is claiming that Dylan Mortensen said that was not, of course, in the probable cause affidavit during the course of the recent hearings. Angel says, I want to hear what Dylan Mortensen, Bethany Funk, Jack DeCore, everyone said in their statements, interviews, all the evidence from, hold it. I know what I have to show you. Okay. I forgot our document, McJay. All right. Okay, let me bring this in. Something just triggered my memory on that there. I don't know what it was, but I guess it was the interviews. So stop screen and start screen. And okay, so let me go back up just to read you the preface of this document. It is the defense's notice filing the stipulated exhibits for the Frank's motion. So it's the exhibits admitted by stipulation during the various motions. So they want these items of evidence, these evidentiary items to be suppressed, okay, via the Frank's hearing, okay? All right, let me get all this other stuff off the screen, okay. So we have I'm just going to read through a few of them. Email communication between Detective Payne, FBI agent Balance, I don't know how to say that, and Latah County Prosecutor's Office. Email with additional PC attachments from FBI agent Nicholas Balance to Brett Payne. Oh, that was a typo above. Email working draft for search warrant for AT&T from Brett Payne to FBI agent Nicholas Balance. Exhibit A statement of Dustin Blaker affidavit presented to judge in Washington. So there were two Exhibit A perspectives from Dustin Blaker and from Brett Payne, and they want Exhibit A, the statement from Dustin Blaker, to be suppressed, along with the affidavit for the search warrant for Google, the affidavit in support of arrest, transcripts for motion to compel, both CAS reports, a whole bunch of statements from officers, emails with vehicle identification expert, affidavit in support of the search warrant, Payne's instant message communications, the BOLO, various sealed transcripts from the grand jury hearings, the return on the search warrant, the Cellbrite report, that's the phone data download dump. The shoe print outside of Dylan Mortensen's room. Messaging with pain. There is a shitload of typos in here. The ISP forensics. All right, here we start with the interviews with Dylan Mortensen. I mentioned that there were 4 on 4 separate distinct occasions. They want suppress the interview with Dylan Mortensen from November 17th, 2022. That's 4 days after the crime occurred. The interview with Dylan Mortensen from December 1st, 2022. Those are 2 of them. Keep count. Oh, there's something about the IgG DNA. The return on the receipt of the inventory order. The affidavit for the search warrant for the AT&T, the first warrant. The second warrant for the AT&T information. That's Bryan Kohberger's phone download. The return of the search warrant for something else. The trap and trace warrant. So that's, going to have to do with phone records again. Again, the Exhibit C from AT&T. So that's probably the return from AD&T. The affidavit and search warrant for pen register. So that's going to be happening in Pennsylvania. The arrest affidavit. The Pennsylvania State Police report. The Pennsylvania State Police report. And another one. Another application for a search warrant. A letter to Brett Payne from the Sergeant Michael Lang of the Pennsylvania State Police. The affidavit for search warrant for Bryan Kohberger's person. So that's the buccal swab from his cheek. Again, the affidavit for his person, something different. The return for the search warrant of his spot in Washington. Apple preservation letter, Apple subpoena certification. So all the information from Apple, essentially. Still working on Apple. The return of the search warrant dated August 14th. So that was a separate search warrant. I'm not sure for what. Amazon, everything. They want Amazon, everything suppressed. They want everything Google search suppressed. This is basically all the evidence. And I know there was mentionings of 4 interviews with Dylan Mortensen. I must have scanned by. I don't know the word I want, guys. I missed them. So yeah, so that is the defense's motion for evidence suppression as a result of the desired Frank's hearing. Okay. It's like everything. Of course they want everything thrown out. They don't want a trial. They just want their guy to go, right? Yeah, that would be the best outcome for them. Okay. Tammy Lynn says, oh, right, Watts, one thing I really wanted to hear y'all's thoughts on, what if the wounds on the victims don't match that of the K-bar knife that would fit in the sheath? Then is this DNA relevant? Well, my understanding is a K-bar knife is really like a standard sort of knife, right? It's not like there's a small, medium, and large K-bar knife, right? And right at the outset of this case, they told us that they were looking for, that the victim's wounds were created by a K-bar style knife. I mean, that was way before any kind of evidence came into fruition or started to solidify. So I think that I believe that the information that we've learned about the nature of the wounds is accurate. I personally believe that. Does anyone think differently? If there was no DNA on the sheath, what other evidence would have pointed to BK's car? Well, yeah, all that circumstantial evidence, and I don't know if they would have ever gotten to him. I do not know. PKC, I agree with this. I do believe Hippler studied this case a lot. He was on top of things even before the defense or prosecution. Absolutely. Wait. So warning label says suspect vehicle 1 leads to thought of suspect vehicle 2. What if it is suspect vehicle 1? I don't understand that. I'm sorry. Can you clarify? I'm sure it's a good point. Narrator said he's probably jealous of their lifestyle, but if he was obsessed, it's weird because there was no SA involved, or maybe he had impotence issues and was angry because he was so obsessed. Well, I think there's a lot of reasons that could suggest that. And also, something I just know from my profession is that there can be sexually motivated crimes that don't actually involve sex. I know it sounds weird, but, if people have problems in that regard, it might be habitual for them to act out sex in different ways. Anyhow, I'm not sure how I can really explain that in a nutshell. I think we'd have to do a whole topic on that. Oh, thank you, Angel D. Where do you share your stuff, Angel D, by the way, so we can all go there? Some of your comments I think are great, but I can't quite contextualize them. So, Tammy Lynn says, I bet they want the footprint suppressed because it was most likely it doesn't match it doesn't match the size of BK and therefore becomes exculpatory. Well, it was a defense that wanted the footprint suppressed. That was a defense wanting all those things suppressed. Mm-hmm. Angel D says the narrator, well, that's interesting because either Papa Rogers or Inside Looking, definitely Papa Rogers, as if people thought the perp had performance issues or something like that. Yeah. Could be a victim shoe print. Absolutely, sure it could. Or it just could be some random person's footprint. Yeah, they were taking that. If you don't ask, you don't get. Approach to suppression. Yeah, get rid of everything. Knox Randall says, look at dumpster at 4 a.m. It's crazy how many people were active at that time. Let me see. You keep bringing that up. Let me see if I can find any of that video. Give me a sec here. Let's see. All right, let me see if I can find it. Let's see. Maybe I'm not doing the right search. Oh, wait, while I'm looking for that, remember this? Hold it.
Less than an hour ago, we were here and about 5 plainclothes investigators, we don't know if they're local, state, federal, they were inside and we saw a lot of activity inside the home and the home was lit up. So we were able to peek in some of the windows, but we saw those men inside the home in the 2 particular rooms where the murders took place. We did not see them leaving with any materials. I asked them a couple of times, why are they back? They did not answer me. They pulled away in 2 vehicles. One had a Washington state plate. The other had an Idaho plate. But that is all we can tell you. But we did see a lot of activity. This house was lit up for nearly an hour. They were inside. We don't know why. Nothing seemed to be removed. But as you know, Ashley, yesterday, a lot of the kids' belongings were removed by Moscow police to be returned to their families.
So I'm just watching these guys as they're walking by you. Were you asking them questions? And
I just have to say the trial will be live, and God, I really hope it goes off as scheduled, because right now jury selection is scheduled to begin in the end of July, and the trial will then begin at the very beginning of August. And God, pray if that happens, I have summers off and I will be covering every moment of it live right here on What's the Obsession. Be here or be square. It doesn't rhyme. Be here or be a sphere.
were they effectively just ignoring you? Did they say hello? Did they say anything at all?
Not a peep. And I asked them specifically, why are you here tonight? Why are you here tonight? They did not acknowledge me. So certainly they were on a mission and they left without saying a word.
So Nancy, I just want to point out the video that we're seeing right now. Let's blow this up full because, and let's replay that if we can too. This is the investigators walking out of the kitchen area into a hallway and then walking towards the living room. So there they are. It looks like they're emerging from the kitchen area, walking towards the front of the house. That grassy sign that's on the wall right there, that's the good vibes sign.
Mhm.
There's actually two of those
Yep.
signs in the house. It's very confusing. There's a good vibe sign that
Right.
was lit up in Kaylee Gonsalves's room. And there's also that same grassy good vibe sign right down there that faces the front in the living room. So they're walking out of the kitchen area and walking towards the front of the house in the living room on the second floor there. But that's the first time, Nancy, that we've actually been able to see them at work inside the house.
Right. And looking inside, we did see, so many signs of a typical college life, the items that we saw, red Solo cups, we saw a beer bottle, and there you see the window with the shades drawn, but you see the shadows of them working in that room. But yeah, they were inside. They seemed to be targeted in where they were going and what they were doing, and then they left without a word. Even though
Curious
I tried
about
to
the
get some
kitchen.
comments out of them.
Yeah, it's curious about
Yeah.
the kitchen because we're still trying to get confirmation as to whether, the killer entered through that back kitchen sliding door. But, listen, on a crime scene, they're going to look at every inch of that house. I am interested when you said that there was a Washington plate, because the very first thing I thought of when I saw those guys is they don't look local necessarily. And I don't say that because they don't look like they're from Idaho. It just looks like they're moving in a particularly specific way.
Yeah.
And this late in the game, it just screams FBI to me, and maybe an FBI field office that's partially from Washington, maybe an FBI field office from the Idaho area. But did you ask if they were from FBI or what jurisdiction? And they just said, nothing to see here?
Yeah, they would give me nothing. And I did call Moscow police, no answer, no response. So no explanation for any of this, but they were clearly inside on a mission.
I mean, 25 days of processing a crime scene, to me, it's something I haven't really seen unless it's, a massive school shooting. That could take 25 days because there's just so many victims and so much territory and so many markings. This one is a really unusual complexity. I can only think it's because there's just so many samples in that house over the years and over the times that the kids have been there that I'm still shocked they only have 113 pieces of evidence. Nancy, thank you for getting that video and for being the eagle eye and spotting that. Really do appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. So I want to answer this question. Warning label says, Kelly, do you think the Hunter J climbed the ladder to see in Xana's window? And that's when he yelled, call 911. I don't think that. And, something was said during the hearings, and I made a video about it. Well, a lot more was discussed in that video. Actually, let me just show you the very beginning part of that video because it'll explain it. But I have always maintained, as Angel D will tell you, that, and I learned this from the student sources that I have who were friends of Ethan Chapin. Ethan Chapin was found on the bed. He just was. I mean, I dare say that's fact. In my mind, it definitely is. I think it makes sense too, because that horrific blood, the bleeding of the house on the outside of the house is directly below Xana Kernodle's bed. He was not found on the floor. He was found on the bed. So I don't think that there was really anything blocking the doors. Oh, and then the other part of it is going to be explained here. Just a sec. Okay. All right, hold it. Whoop. Okay. Here we go. See, these lives could just keep going and going and going. You guys ask questions. I'm like, oh, hey, let's look at this. But I am going to have tendencies. I always do this. Okay. Through the attorneys for both Bryan Kohberger and the state of Idaho, the public learned a lot that had yet to be disclosed about the case during the hearing proceedings on Thursday, January 23rd and Friday, January 24th. In this video, we are going to be talking about the surviving roommates some of the issues that were brought up in the hearing, and in particular, what was going on with their phone activity and what were they doing specifically around the time of the murders and right after. Also, during these hearing proceedings, a bomb was dropped by the defense that debunks or clarifies theories that people have had about this crime since the beginning. We're going to start by talking about that bomb that was dropped.
Inside the house, in a bedroom with an open door, where the other bedrooms that contained people that died, their bedroom doors were open, and this dog had not tracked any blood around. The dog had no blood on it whatsoever.
Did you catch it? Let's listen again to just a little part of that, of Ann Taylor speaking to the court in that segment.
The other bedrooms that contained people that died, their bedroom doors were open.
Yeah, the other bedrooms that contained people that had died, victims, the bedroom doors were open. What? Now, before we talk about the questions that are popping up in your head that have already come up in my mind, let me just address a few of them. The bedrooms, she says, bedrooms plural, that contained people that had died, those doors were open. So she definitely, at least in the way she's presenting it to the court right now, is talking about 2 bedroom doors, or rather more than 1 bedroom door, because she says Ann Taylor said bedrooms and was referring to more than 1 bedroom door that contained victims was open.
The other bedrooms that contained people that died, their bedroom doors were open.
Now, additionally, you can create a scenario in your mind where you say, okay, she's talking about bedroom doors, 2 bedroom doors that contained victims that were open. Well, eventually, obviously, yeah, the bedroom doors were open. First responders came in, had to open the bedroom doors if they were in fact closed to get to the victims. And ultimately, the bedroom doors were open. But the way that she is presenting this fact in case as a fact leads me to believe that the bedroom doors were open since after the crime happened indefinitely, taking into account what law enforcement learned from the roommates and from the friends that the roommates summoned that may have gone into the house through their interviews with them. Now, this all ultimately has to speak to how this horrible scene was found, who found the scene, why the roommates didn't call 911 for 8 hours, and also the friends that were summoned to the house that morning, as Chief James Fry said. About a year ago, Daniel from the Drunk Turkey Show spoke to Christy Gonzalez. He did a live stream talking about some of the things that they discussed when they were having a discussion about all of the rhetoric, the true things, the false rumors that were going around. Turquoise, and welcome. It's great to see you again. I haven't seen you in a while. I'm so glad you're here. And yeah, she said contained victims. If I didn't say that twice, I said it once, and then I just, when she said the first time, I shuddered, and when I repeated it, I shuddered. I hate how she says rooms that contained victims. It sounds so not human and sterile. So if I didn't quote her verbatim, that was why. About this case. And as he was talking about that, he disclosed that he learned, apparently from Christy Gonzalez, that Ethan's body was blocking the door. At least that's how I took it. Now, this is a call-in show that I'm going to play to the Drunk Turkey Show, and they are discussing a topic that's been discussed since forever in this case, and that is that the 911 call came in as an unconscious person's call, which, as we all know, doesn't seem congruent with the scene and the amount of blood on the scene as we know it to be. Listen here to what Daniel has to say. Yeah.
From what I understand, why it came out as an
Angel, do it, say it.
unconscious individual was probably a lot of panic. You know, from what I understand is that Hunter Johnson got a call from one of the girls or both of the girls. I'm not sure, but he had told the Gonzalez's that he had gotten a call from the girls to go over, and he got there. He went to their rooms, to the second floor, tried to get in. It was blocked, is the term that he had used, and then he was able to push the door open slightly enough to look into it, and he saw the scene, right? And there was apparently a body that was blocking the door. And so I don't think that Dylan or Bethany, I think if there's a possibility that maybe Dylan went to the first floor in the morning or something like that. But I don't think that Dylan or Bethany ever actually checked the second floor door. And I don't think that they actually checked, the third floor either. I think that they, were in a panic, heard some noises. And with that being said, they, called their friends to go look because they were too scared.
Now, if the bedroom doors were open to both of the bedrooms containing victims, then it is hard to make sense of the idea that Dylan and Bethany first had to summon their friends over before the bodies were discovered because they didn't know what happened or they didn't see the scene that was present in their house this morning. It just raises a lot more questions about what happened that morning to know that both bedroom doors were open.
People have been describing this as incredibly the worst bloody or the bloodiest scene that I've ever seen. They've been describing this the scene of the four victims as being so bloody. So it doesn't really make sense to me that that this person would have thought that the person was just unconscious. And even if they did, why do you call your friends instead of calling for medical help?
That has been a question since this crime happened in 2022, and I guess we still have more questions and answers. Now, regarding the possibility of both bedroom doors being opened, therefore, it couldn't possibly have been the case that Ethan's body was behind Xana's bedroom door, therefore blocking the door so nobody could get it open. I personally had never thought that that was the case. From the information this channel has learned from our inside sources, who are people that happen to be friends with Ethan Chapin, that's how they're connected most strongly to this case. From what they understand, Ethan was tragically found on the bed, on Xana Kernodle's bed, which makes perfect sense to me because we see the picture of the blood on the exterior of 1122 King Road. And where that spot is, where you can see the blood on the outside of the house, it is directly beneath Xana Kernodle's bed. Now let's take a listen to what Ann Taylor said about the witness statement from Dylan Mortensen. She was raising questions about the legitimacy of Dylan Morton's statement. And then we'll hear what the state had to say about it. And then we're going to go into what we actually know about the roommate's experience that night based on fact and source generated information. Okay.
Person that was in.
Then we go on to something else. So Angel, I didn't know that. And thank you so much for telling me that. She says, well, I guess it's a matter of public knowledge. That's so sad. I'm going to reach out to him and see if there's anything we can do to help him. Where'd that post go? I think I started it. Oh, Angel says, Kelly, you probably already know this, and I didn't know that, but Drunk Turkey Show Daniel was mauled by his dog earlier this week and almost lost his arm. Oh my God, poor Daniel. We're all sending him prayers and hopes for him and his family. I just reached out to him recently to see if he wanted to come on the show, and he responded to me like he wasn't sure who I was. I didn't get back to him yet, but I am so sorry for that. That's terrible. And I like Daniel. I think he's a good guy. And I think the way that, I've been reading some of the comments that he's presenting things now is straight on point. I think there was a while where maybe the intentions were a little confused. But anyway, I like Daniel, and I'm just so sorry that happened. Daniel's posted about it on his channel. Oh man, I do hope he's okay. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to reach out to him and see if, I don't know if he needs, maybe we can do some like couple fundraising lives for him. I don't know if he needs that. But my God, that's terrible. Oh. Yeah. Well, okay. So I'm sorry to Daniel's family. That's terrible. Narrator says, well, it was party house. If that actually happened, and who knows if it did, they could have just thought he was passed out. Yeah, it's true. He apparently did drink a lot. That's known. Because they're partying and probably were worried if there was any underage anything going on or just straight up illegal, possibly. I'm just saying, possibly. That may seem really crazy to most adults, but I can see the mindset of a college student who is underage or just doing illegal things, period. You are generally mistrustful of any authority at that point in your life. Yeah, and I still somewhat am, but yeah, no, good point. Maddie May says, good comments, Maddie May. Thank you. And if Xana did change her door lock, then the ladder on the side of the house makes sense. Okay, maybe. Yeah, maybe. But then there was, Ann Taylor just saying that the doors were open. Some people in comments, though, on this video after I put it out said maybe by open, she just meant unlocked. I don't know. I mean, you guys made some good points. Yeah, but, I took it a certain way, but maybe I didn't take it the right way. Yeah. And Edward says it makes no sense that if they make legal drinking age 21 in most places, they send kids off to school at 18, expect them not to drink. Just saying, no, I agree on that. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, that's terrible. I'm so sorry for Daniel, really. Knox Randall says 2 things can be true at one time. That's right. We were talking about that earlier too, Knox Randall. Really great and important point. So, all right, guys. Well, I am going to wrap this up. Okay, one more comment. Tammy Lynn says, I think BK chose that night for a reason because everyone would have been drinking at the homecoming game and very drunk, passed out that night. No one would have been able to fight back properly. I think that's a really good theory. I've never heard that before. I think that's really good thinking. I've loved all your comments, Tammy Lynn, and everybody else. And PKC says, I think the lock being changed was misunderstanding. Possibly, right? Because it was said by Xana's mother who, yeah. So, all right, guys, I am going to end this, but thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much, moderators, subscribers, members. Please do click like. If you're not subscribed, I'd invite you to subscribe. We would love to have you back, and maybe you're going to want to come back too. Hey, you never know. And yeah, so remember, life is hard. So guys, be good to everyone else in chat, in your life. Be good to people. We never know what people are going through, but most of all, be good to yourself because you deserve it. And Morning Label says, Kelly, I want to do a show with you. Absolutely. Yeah. Email me. Here's my email. It's whatsobsession@gmail.com. Put your name in the subject so I see it because I get way too much email in that account. And a lot of it's junk. Like, people wanting to do, I don't know, just like I don't do like ads for things and stuff on this channel. You may have noticed. It's just not my thing. I mean, if there was like somebody to partner with that I really believed in, I would, but I just haven't gotten there really yet. But I get a lot of those kinds of emails. I'm not calling your guys' emails junk emails. Tammy Lynn says, thank you so much, Kelly. Happy Lunar New Year from us in Taiwan. Hey, you know what? Lunar New Year here in the United States was just officially made a federal holiday this year. So for the first time ever, I did not go to work and my son did not go to school last Wednesday because it was the Lunar New Year. And where are you from? Taiwan? Okay, Taiwan, yes. My son is half Thai, but I know they're not connected. I'm just thinking out loud because he was talking about some people in his family had celebrated that. Yeah, so thank you guys so much for being here. Sirius Black, great to see you. PKC, Warning Label, Kylie, Angel D, Kachik, thanks for being here. And, everyone else. McJ, thank you so much for helping me out with the information. Narrator, it's great to have you. Anaphylaxis, you are priceless. And Crime and Crochet, hadn't seen you yet. Hi, how are you doing? Great to see you. Knox Randall, thanks for being here. Edward. Okay, I'm just going to stop there. I'm never going to be able to say goodbye because it's so hard to say goodbye, you guys. But I will definitely see you soon. And if you haven't yet, check out the most recent video I dropped on the Idaho case. It is a continuation of the video we were just watching. But then we go into everything that we know, including what I know from the sources of this channel as to what happened that night between the two roommates. So here is a link to the most recent Idaho video here in the comments. All right, love you guys. Take care and I'll see you soon.